enraged enough people that their non-choosing sides has now become choosing sides. So you're going to see several nations apply for NATO membership in the next month or so, so that they can also assist.
I just want to mention, excuse me, I'm getting deluged with emails from people. There's a problem with our web, our broadcast at the moment, and they're working on it.
Okay.
So if you're looking for us, we're not
Margery
there yet.
probably disabled it because she was concerned
I
about the
disabled it.
quality
Is
of
this
her
YouTube?
lipstick.
Was
at the
YouTube
beginning
like
of
a
the
bridge
show.
too far? Are we live on the radio, though? Or are we still good?
We're live
on
on the
the
radio.
radio.
We are
Okay.
not online.
We
at the
have
moment.
faces
One last
for radio,
thing.
so that's
every
good.
time I see what the Polish government and the Polish people are doing
Yeah.
for almost 3 million refugees, people know there's somewhere between 4.5 and 5 million people that have left Ukraine. Roughly a little less than 3 million have gone to Poland. I just did the math while you and Margery were talking. That increases the Polish population by roughly 8%.
Yeah.
Right.
That's like having 35 million people
Show up.
come to the United States.
With free health care.
I was just
Yeah.
going to say, free medical care. They're trying to keep the kids educated. They
Yeah,
got to
in the
provide
schools.
housing. I mean, how does that?
Yeah.
How can that be sustained?
Well, it can't be. I mean, so part of the refugees issue with the Ukrainians is the expectation. I'd say, unlike the Syrians, the expectations that they will likely return. So even our opening the doors, it's important that the United States open the doors. People will come here. People are here. They're coming here, and the numbers have increased. But most Ukrainians, at least according to the NGOs on the ground, want to stay close in Europe, with the expectation that this is a horror that happened to their nation, but that it won't be like the Syrian civil war, which lasted 7, 8, 9 years. So,
Yeah, but even if the war is
Oh,
over
I
a
know.
year, look at the photographs, the
Of the
video of
schools, yeah.
Mariupol.
Yeah.
Even if the war was over today, there's
can't go back,
nothing to move
right.
back
Well, you
to.
also wonder, too, who's going to pay for this?
right.
And
Well,
do we-
that's going to be what sort of Marshall Plan is going to exist for Ukraine. That's the longer term, right? The shorter term is looking over the horizon is because Ukraine's supply chain is obviously disrupted, the farming, everything. They supply so much grain to the world
I
food
never even
economy,
knew that
Sorted
until
out.
this began.
and then also in Africa. So if you're thinking about sort of the downstream national security implications of what Russia did, the eyes are now focusing on food deprivation in Africa, which is one of Ukraine's major markets, because these are obviously, many of them are unstable countries that don't have bandwidth to satisfy the food supply. So, I'll talk about today, but also tomorrow in terms of what makes me nervous, which is food deprivation then becomes a reason for conflict, but also a reason for movement. And then you're just worried about mass migrations out of Africa in search of food as well, which we've seen in the past.
Well, and also not nearly, obviously, not even in the ballpark of hunger, but supply chain disruptions, because this war are in part what's contributing to this record high inflation that could lead to a new government in this country.
Yeah,
part
in this
'cause of
country,
war.
right? No, it is this summer with gas prices, with potentially a refugee issue, with immigration issues. It is going to be one in which the Biden White House just needs to sort of get ahead of it. But they've got so many issues, and the pocketbook ones are the ones that are going to be primary. And it does not. I don't know how they continue to. I know what they do. They're trying to lower gas prices and food prices, as we've seen from the announcement this morning. But it is going to be a very difficult summer for the White House in terms of managing a lot of different issues that seem not solvable very, very quickly.
And the climate activists are very upset with what we're doing about this, which is drilling.
What you're going to do, you're going to have to satisfy supply to get
Bill listen to Bill
McKibben
McKibben is
thinks
what
we
you
need
do.
to keep pumps over there and to get us off the this stranglehold that we're in right now with money made from Russian oil. But let's move on to Elon Musk. People know Elon Musk. He's from, of course, Tesla, the electric car company, and he bought a 9.2% share of Twitter. But apparently, after a lot of consternation, he's decided he's not going to be on the Twitter board of directors. So what do we make of the impact, even of that 9.2% share, whether he's on the board or not?
The general sense is that him being on the board would have deprived him of a certain percentage of ownership. So the thinking is
14.9
14.9,
max. I
right.
just learned that
Yeah,
this
so I didn't know
morning,
these rules either.
Neither did
So,
I.
so by not being a board member, it's going to actually let him have more influence over Twitter. As a board member of a public company, you do have an obligation not to be a jerk, and that might have been too hard for Elon Musk. But this clearly seems to me, this seems to me to be part of a larger play to mess with Twitter, right? So you sort of get them fake excited. No one believed that Twitter wanted him on the board. Fake excited. They have to put out these press releases. Oh, Elon Musk is coming on. Then he denies them on I think it was Sunday. On Sunday, and then they have to say, well, this is for the best as well. It's not for the best for Twitter. He's going to try to get majority ownership. He's an unstable genius. He's the most complicated. He's so complicated because going back to Ukraine, it's his efforts in terms of creating satellite capacity for Ukrainians that is everyone who's assessing it is saying that this has been a major, major contribution to the Ukrainians being able to have
on the internet.
Communication,
Yeah.
right,
Yes.
and to talk about the war and to figure out what's going on in the war. So this is he's just, he's difficult, but I don't think this is the end for Twitter. There was something interesting in the release that Twitter did to say he wasn't going to join that everyone's picking up on, which says something, the SEC requires background checks for public institutions. And they just throw out, well, after, the concern about a background check, I was like, what does that man have that we don't know? Because I feel like we know enough to already know that
we know enough to not want to know anymore,
Exactly,
I think.
exactly.
Yeah, but wait a second. As Margery knows, economics is one of my real strong suits.
Yes.
Right.
Not hostile takeover city. It's so obvious to me, unless he just wants to mess with him, as you and I just learned this morning, 14.9 max a percentage ownership of a company if you're on the board of this public company. By not being in the board, he can afford to buy up whatever he wants and go to a 51% share or whatever you need for a hostile takeover. Right. And for people to say, what's the difference? This is a guy who is very upset about how Twitter is moderated from what I've learned in the last week, meaning, and while I don't think he's been explicit, it's a free speech forum, should people like Donald Trump
be back on?
Not be on? And my assumption is the negotiating position for Musk very well might be, I won't take over the company if you not just create this edit function that he's talking a lot about, an after-the-fact edit function, but you don't ban people.
Yeah.
Let the market decide. The implications
remember,
of this could be huge.
Huge. Remember Elon Musk, early March 2020, sent out a tweet that said our panic about COVID is ridiculous, right? So whether taking things off, but this edit function issue is really dangerous.
Why?
So I used to be for the edit function.
This is after you post, you can edit your tweet.
So imagine I say, everybody get the vaccine. It is great, and I get 10,000 retweets, 20,000 likes. Those are now there. I then come back and say, the vaccine is dangerous. Everybody ignore it and take horse pills. Now that message that all sorts of other people who might be reliable, responsible people have retweeted or posted will go out as them agreeing with it.
Right.
So
Wait,
it's a
those
bait
likes
and
and
switch.
retweets don't disappear once there's an edit?
Yeah, that's the thought. Now, maybe they're going to figure out a way in which everything does it. But it doesn't make sense, though, because one of the reasons I'm a big Twitter person that you want an edit function is because there's massive engagement and you see a typo. This is what always happens to me. My most engaged tweets, I have, some typo, which just drives me nuts. But the worry is that people go back.
Yeah, but my position would be, live
no
with the
engagement.
typo and no edit function. Send a new tweet.
I'm in the no edit world right now too. For this reason that I say, oh, Elon Musk said something responsible about vaccines, I'll retweet it, and then he puts a not, in it. And trust me, the little I know about that guy with no background check, I don't
You ever
want,
met him, by the way?
No, I have not.
You have not.
I have
I liked him
not.
on Saturday Night Live with his mother.
Yeah, yeah.
He was very.
Is he
there
not
was
the richest
something-
person? He's richer
I don't
than
know.
Bezos
Yeah,
now? He's the
yeah.
richest
But he was
person in the world.
surprisingly endearing and charismatic. But in any case, let's move on to Michigan Governor
Yes.
Gretchen Whitmer. People may recall that these group of men had conspired to kidnap her, take her out in a lake, and hold a mock trial and all this kind of stuff.
Allegedly is the
Allegedly,
key word.
yeah.
Well, it's not
Allegedly.
even allegedly
Anymore.
anymore.
Innocent.
Well, yeah,
Not even hung.
two not guilty and to a hung jury. But the FBI involvement here in terms of really cooking the books.
Yeah.
Entrapment is
Entrapment.
what was the defense.
I think of the 24 in the group. I didn't know this when they were arrested. The 24 in the group, 17 of them were FBI informants
I didn't
or
know that
agents,
either.
or some huge percentage of them. This is sort of a perfect defense that a group of people who don't like Governor Whitmer, who are rallying, are brought together. They are pushed to criminal activity through FBI informants who are looking to be relieved of some penalty, right? Because you become an FBI informant because likely you're on the wrong side of the law for another reason, by pushing others to a place where they might have not originally had the intent. I'm not saying these guys are good. I'm just saying that the jury said essentially, and it seems there's sufficient evidence that they were pushed in a direction of intent that would not have existed but for the entrapment.
Entrapment
Yeah,
almost
shoot.
never works as a defense,
No.
I should say.
Yeah.
Almost
Yeah,
never.
shoot.
Never.
A
So
big-
it must have been bad.
Yeah.
That was my theory too. That
Yeah.
this must be so bad. I didn't follow the trial.
Nor
Let me
did
ask you
I.
a big picture question. You know, we do seem to hear a lot about malfeasance within the FBI. You get the sense sometimes there's a rogue element here that we constantly hear these stories of somebody going off the deep end in one way or another. I mean, we all remember just in Boston, John Conley
Yes.
and Whitey Bulger, and it wasn't just John Conley, although he's the person that wound up doing the biggest, paying the biggest price for what
Yeah,
happened.
I
How
mean,
about the
the-
ones in the Indianapolis office ignoring the complaints
That's
about
right.
scores of
Gymnasts.
sexual abuse
Yes.
by that
Right.
doctor?
Because he
And
wanted to get a job
Because he was applying
with the
for
Olympics.
a job with
Yeah.
the Olympic Committee
Yeah.
while
I mean,
this
it
is
seems like
happening.
every few months,
Yeah.
or maybe that's an exaggeration, but certainly every couple of years, there's
Yes.
something else. So
yeah, I mean,
what's
think
the
about
deal?
the magnitude of oversight that must have occurred in an investigation of a potential kidnapping of a governor of the state. So it's not just the FBI informants. There's a whole bunch of FBI agents, supervisors, and the special agent in charge who are well aware that this is happening. So historically, the FBI has been, you get promoted, you get raises, you get on path to being what's called a special agent in charge, which is you're sort of in charge of a jurisdiction by prosecutions and not by investigations or even disruptions. So the FBI has tried to get better about changing that incentive structure for their own agents. In other words, if I'm just investigating, I'll still get brownie points for it. But they're still in the mind frame of the only thing that matters is if I get an indictment in a grand jury.
Well, that's
and moving
unfortunate,
forward. Yes,
it would
yes.
seem.
Yeah, right. Especially because a lot of these investigations, especially as they include, say, right-wing terrorism or political terrorism, are ones in which the investigation may actually end up being nothing. So you don't want the incentive structure to be, well, we got to get them on violence, so let's push the envelope a little bit.
Hey, Juliette, thank you very much.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
Juliette Kayyem. Thank you
see you
much.
guys.
Good luck today.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're going to be on CNN
Yep,
today
I'm actually
talking
doing
about
it from your
Yeah.
closet behind me.
It's
so-
terrible mess.
That's
live in-
called our control room,
Yeah,
not our
it
closet.
looks like a
Thank you.
closet to me. I'll see you later.
Okay,
Thanks,
Juliette
Juliette.
Kayyem, thank you very much for coming in. Juliette Kayyem joins us every week. She is the former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and she's got a great new book, The Devil Never Sleeps, Learning to Live in an Age of Disasters. It's about hurricanes, it's about blizzards, it's about Fukushima, it's about COVID, it's about disasters that we confront almost on a weekly basis, it seems, around here now. Okay, up next, Today, the Labor Department reporting that consumer prices for last month went up 8.5% over last year, the highest increase in more than 40 years. Gasoline, as everybody knows, has jumped like crazy, 48% in the last year. Groceries up 10%. We are going to talk to you about inflation. Open the lines at 877-301-8970. How is this impacting your life, your ability to go to the grocery store, your ability to go to the gas station, your ability to pay for almost anything, and your political ideas about how we're running this whole thing. 877-301-8970, BPR at WGBH.org. You can tweet us at Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live, as we do every Tuesday and Friday, from the Boston Public Library.
Get the latest in Massachusetts politics right in your inbox with the GBH News Politics newsletter. Stay up to date with everything going on at City Hall, the State House, and communities across the state. With Adam Riley, Soraya Wintersmith, and Peter Katzis. The GBH News Politics newsletter brings thoughtful, sharp perspectives on our premier elections and upcoming legislation. Subscribe today at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you and Small Army Fin Partners. For over 20 years, they have been helping brands build relationships with people through strategic messaging, planning, and storytelling. Learn more at smallarmy.net. And Wentworth Institute of Technology, future-focused, career-ready, located in the heart of Boston's Fenway neighborhood. You can pursue your opportunity at Wentworth Institute of Technology. Learn more at wit.edu.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim, Browdy, Margery Egan, live at the Boston Public Library and live streaming yet again on YouTube. You can watch us at youtube.com/GBH News. Just a little update from our colleagues. Elon Musk is worth twice what Warren Buffett is worth, $100 billion more than Jeff Bezos. Musk's net worth is now about $300 billion. And in all fairness, he's got to feed the kids. So
He's got to feed the kids.
Got to make a living.
He's got a couple of them with kind of odd names.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he
like
does.
Apple and Dweezil and that sort of thing?
I forget. C-Scope or some crazy thing.
In any case, hamburgers, gas, electricity, rent, grape nuts, pretty much everything you've been spending money on costs a lot more now than it did a year ago. Margery just mentioned these numbers. Labor Department this morning reported consumer prices for last month up 8.5% over last year, highest increase in 4 decades. Gasoline up almost 50%, groceries up 10%. So we're opening the lines asking you, what items have you needed to cut back on? How has it affected your life? And will it affect your vote come November? The number is 877-301-8970, bprwgbh.org, and you can tweet us at BOS Public Radio. Those are big numbers, you know.
I just want to mention, I guess he's got more than a couple of kids. He's got 7 kids, but he's got
Musk?
but 2 of them. One of them is named Exa, E-X-A Dark, and that's an unusual name.
My younger daughter's named Exa Dark. Actually, what an incredible, what a coincidence. 877-301-8970.
So they've got these devastating stories about how inflation is impacting people. They talked to a woman in Colorado. She's a widow. Her heating bill last month was $306, more than double the $125 she paid before that. She talks about how her almost all her income, and she lives in a 2-bedroom mobile home, is going to pay for her heat. She can't afford to get food, even a treat once a month for an $8 Big Mac meal. Other people that are middle-class people are really struggling as well. I guess summer camp, I don't really know why summer camp has gone up so much, but I guess summer camp has gone up quite a lot. And people
60% they're talking about in most states. 60%
Yeah. I don't know.
Increase.
Well, wages have gone up, but the problem is the wages haven't kept pace with inflation. They interview this people talking about sticker shock. So Dad goes to the grocery store. He figures he can try to pull a fast one, and he can, instead of getting the Lucky Charms, the next time he goes, he just saves the Lucky Charms box, and he buys a generic off-brand marshmallow cereal, stuffs it into the Lucky Charms box.
Not fooling those
the
kids.
Children are not fooled at all. So there's a lot of that, trying to sneak, off-brand cereals, eating less meat. Meat has gone up really a lot. The big thing, though, in this list of estimated price inflation since February 2021, which is supposedly going to continue on to the end of the year. Oranges, through the roof. They've gone up 14.3%. Ground beef, up 13.6%. Land O'Lakes margarine, up 11.4%.
You know, if I never had another orange, I'd be fine. But ground beef
Not
is a whole
me.
other story.
Yeah,
I
I'm
know
into
you're a big
oranges.
juice
Big into
person.
oranges. And Eggland's grade A eggs up 11.4%, and plus milk is up a lot too.
877-301-8897. And the reasons are obviously supply chain problems, as we said to Juliette, exacerbated by the war against Ukraine and all this pent-up demand. And by the way, things on a lot, you know, one of it's clear to me, we'll talk to John King about this in the 1 o'clock hour, Democrats and Joe Biden are going to pay the price, despite the fact that I think job growth over the last 11 months is at a level for 11 months in a row that we've not seen in decades and decades. It has no consequence. This is what people feel.
Well, the Wall Street Journal, which is a business paper,
Yeah.
you know, points out that high inflation is the downside of booming growth,
Of
an
course.
economy that has bounced back dramatically from the COVID-19 pandemic. And I
But
thought,
people
well, why?
are not doing like an intellectual analysis.
No, but I was thinking, so why didn't we have that after the 2007-2008 recession? Because we didn't bounce back. It was a long, slow increase. Remember, it kept going up
I don't
slowly.
remember,
Things
though I
weren't great in
believe you.
2010. They weren't great. They started to get better in 2011, 2012, by the time Barack Obama ran against Mitt Romney. But it wasn't a bounce back. This has been a bounce back.
Does Biden get blamed for all this? The answer is yes, right?
Probably, yeah.
877-301-8097. Let's start in Mansfield with Justin. Justin, you're on Boston Public Radio. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Jim and Margery. It's great to talk to you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been finding different and new creative ways to save money. I mean, recently I was on a business trip, and, you know, the airlines, as you guys know, has been an absolute nightmare. But I carpooled with 4 of my friends down to where we're going down south, and we saved a few bucks, and we had some memories that we'll never forget.
I bet
and
you
I've
did.
also, it was nothing but great times, Jim. Also, what I'm doing now is when I go out, I eat a lot of fast food if I'm on the road a lot. Like at Chick-fil-A, I found out if you order the kids' meal, you could get ice cream instead of a toy. That saves you a few bucks, a couple extra calories there. So it's been, you got to get creative, right?
Let me tell you, I would take ice cream over a toy any day of the week. Justin, thank you very much for your call. We appreciate it. By the way, airline fares
Huge.
exploding.
Well, the guy,
And, you know,
one of
at
the guys
same-
was talking about, it fill up your tank. Imagine how much it costs to fill up an airplane.
No, of course. I mean, obviously it's fuel kind of thing. But also that's happening at the same time that apparently bookings are totally through the roof.
Right.
So I'm not sure how those two forces, you know, sort of meet and operate.
Now, what they're going to do, of course, is probably raise interest rates more dramatically than they already have. Instead of going up a quarter point, again, the Wall Street Journal is reporting the interest rates could go up a half a point by the next meeting in May.
That'll
Just
be
kind
good,
of
so
slow
that no one
down.
can afford anything. They can't. That slow things down. That means you can't afford your house, which you can't afford anyway.
Well,
I mean, it's
you know-
that's why people like Larry Summers, former president of Harvard, former secretary of Treasury, are saying a recession's in our future. Which again, you know, those words, they mean something. It doesn't mean anything to real people. I mean, you know, remember, as you do, when I first met you, I was debating Barbara Anderson from Citizens
That's
for
right.
Limited Taxation about tax
Jim raised
policy.
everybody's taxes.
And what she said is her brilliance was to bring everything down to the barbershop level, and that's what this is all about. Inflation, people understand, because it obviously affects them on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. Job growth, the economy booming, what does that mean to an average person? What matters is how it's affecting you and your family. And I'm sort of stunned by how so many experts seem not to understand that, at least according to me.
Well, you know, there was a great podcast about Paul Volcker, who was the Jimmy Carter's, economic guy back when we had remember during Carter's presidency, it was like 17%, 60 people had these mortgage rates that were like through the roof and stuff. And he really chopped it. He really, he was the guy that kept raising the interest rates to manage inflation.
Could you speak for a few minutes on interest rates
No,
and the Fed, please?
I cannot.
So why do you keep mentioning?
Because I think that one of the things that scares politicians is that when Volcker came in and did these dramatic things, it really hurt Jimmy Carter, and I think that's what a lot of Democrats are worried about, even though they're going to get blamed for this anyway. Although we did get a couple of emails. Here's from Allison. Why should anyone think Republicans can fix this any better? Putting them back in power just makes a whole host of other problems even worse on top of prices. This is a horrible situation, made worse by climate change, the pandemic in Russia. It's going to take a long time. It's going to hurt a great many people for months to come, but electing Republicans is not going to fix it.
Well, what's her name?
Allison.
Their solution, Allison, I don't mean this facetiously, to what the Democrats at the moment can't control is we're not the Democrats. I mean, which in American politics is plenty, is we're not going to allow this to happen. No one's ever going to ask them the question about how they're going to stop it from happening. And I think it is poison for Biden and the Democrats, and I'm not sure they have a way out. Kathy, you're in Rockland. You're on Boston Public Radio. Thank you for calling. Hi.
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 I'm a very old person, and when I first went to Europe in the early 1970s, I was shocked at the percentage of people's income that had to be spent on food, clothing, energy costs.
Taxes.
Everyone drove teeny-weeny little cars in Italy where I went, all standard shifts. And I think we're just so spoiled and selfish in this country that we don't understand that the rest of the world doesn't have this cheap abundance that we're so used to, and time to scale back.
Well, you know, I think, frankly, Kathy, if on the gas front at least, that will probably be the consequence. We'll go from pickups and SUVs and large cars back to smaller cars too. But I've had some of the same experiences you've had about the way people live as opposed to the way we expect to live in this country. And thanks for bringing that to our attention. 877-301-89. So what are you searching all this time?
I'm looking at about stories about Paul Volcker, actually.
Oh, who cares about Paul Volcker?
Because it pointed out that what he did was raise interest rates dramatically. Everybody hated him for it, but it's what conquered inflation. And that the Fed today is going to have to do the same thing, attacking money supply growth directly with interest rates, but people politically won't put up with it.
Okay, so Jerome Powell has a press conference today and says, I have a solution. How many people who are upset about inflation are going to say, thank God the head of the Fed has this under control? I mean, it's the only thing that matters is you go to the gas pump, the gas station, you go to the supermarket, you can't pay your rent. I mean, isn't that what that's all it's
Yes, but
about?
I think that's what he's saying, that you need someone that's going to be draconian to solve the inflation problem, and we're just tinkering around the edges. We're not willing to be draconian,
Well,
Jim.
Powell
That's my
has
point.
said in recent testimony that he is he didn't use the word draconian, that he is willing to go further than these little blips up that they did, a month ago or something. 877-301-8970. We want to hear about how you're dealing with these huge inflationary increases. Is it Benrit in a truck? Hi, Benrit.
Hi, Margery. Hi, Jim.
Hey.
Yeah, it's Benrit. And, you know, what Margery said about Carter having, you know, the debacle of
Inflation.
Iran.
Yep.
You're comparing that to the inflation now. I see the same thing, and I feel heartbroken that potentially the Republicans will take over again in a couple of years.
Well, how about a couple of months? I don't think it's a couple of years. I think this is going to help, not that it wasn't trending in that direction anyway. I think this is going to help drive a stake in the heart of the Democrats on the midterms. Again, John King's the expert. We'll ask him in the 1 o'clock hour, Benrit, but I think your greatest fears, as you describe them, are about to become real. Thank you much for the call. 877-301-8970.
We are talking about inflation and how it's impacting you, whether you're going to the grocery store and having a heart attack when you have to find out how much you're going to pay for oranges and milk. I mean, milk has gotten really, really high, gone from $3.74 a gallon up to $4.21 for a gallon. That's a big. What is that, Jim? You're the math guy. I think it's 11%. Isn't that what it is?
That's a lot of money.
Okay, we're going to keep talking about this until the top of the hour. You're listening to 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live as we do every Tuesday and Friday from the Boston Public Library.
Speaking out against China inside China is risky. That's also true for some Chinese immigrants in the United States. Next time on The World, how some are being harassed and intimidated by agents of the Chinese government on American soil.
And they claim that they will try to kill you if I continue to do my activism in the U.S.
Activism, spies, and the Chinese government on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Comcast, Xfinity Internet is committed to bringing speeds over a gig to power your devices while fitting your needs and a range of budgets. Learn more at xfinity.com/gig. And the Umbrella Arts Center in Concord, celebrating love in all its infinite varieties with the joyous musical comedy Head Over Heels, featuring music by the Go-Go's, April 15th through May 8th, theumbrellaarts.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim, Brady, Margery, and we're live at the Boston Public Library, and we're live streaming on YouTube at youtube.com/GBH News. We're taking your calls on the rising costs of everything. You know the number this morning, the inflation number released this morning, 8.5%, a high for, I guess, roughly 4 decades, the highest. The number is 877-301-8970. How's it affecting your life, and will it affect your vote? Let's go to Whitensville with Perry. Hello, Perry.
First of all, both of you, thank you so much for what you do.
Thanks.
It's keeping me sane. I guess, Jim, I just take a different tact, and that is this pain in life. And I know it's simplistic, but we just have to adjust. I mean, I know everyone wants gas prices. What am I going to do? I'd just like to see them change their MO a little bit.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, okay, you know, gas prices are high. Okay, so I guess you have to figure out what am I going to do differently.
Mm-hmm.
I can't drive as much, so how am I going to change myself? Everyone's just complaining that the norm is not the norm. Well, that is life, and I wish people would just talk about new ideas versus just complaining. I guess that's my take, Jim.
Well, the new idea that my co-host here and Bill McKibben talk about nonstop is use this as an opportunity to make changes to ensure we're not going to be beholden to fossil fuel producing nations yet again in the future. But it appears that we've learned nothing and are not using this opportunity for anything except to dig in tougher. So in the abstract, I agree with you, Perry, and I hope people do learn some lessons and figure out how to adjust.
Well, I don't have.
301-8970. I'm sorry.
I really don't have much empathy anymore for people driving around these huge gas guzzlers. I mean,
understand
what are you doing? What are you doing? People that have cars that get like 10 miles to the gallon, it's just insane. You can even get big SUVs that are hybrids. So if you got like 5 kids or something, you can at least get a car that's not going to use up.
Do you think Joe Biden gets it?
Well, Joe Biden came into office promising all these great things on climate. He was going to be the person who's going to do something on climate. And I would say he's pretty much backtracked on everything. And his solution in the Ukraine war is just to pump more oil. And I just don't think that is, I mean, look at how Russia is paying for the slaughter of people in Ukraine with oil and gas and coal.
$1 billion a day.
Yeah, so if we weren't also dependent on oil and gas and coal,
completely.
which Bill McKibben says we now have the technology to move away from. We don't have the political will. And it's really sad because we're running out of time here.
You know, if people have not heard Bill with us the last couple of months, he was with us a couple of days ago, just Google McKibben, McKibben, and heat pumps. You know what the good news, Margery? It appears to be picking up some momentum.
Right.
In Congress
Yes.
and potentially in the White House. And the notion there, this doesn't solve the immediate problem, but it does help transition us, number one. Number two, help Europe decide not to be buying as much fossil fuel from Russia come the fall when it gets cold, are these heat pumps. And his view is that Biden should declare the Defense Production Act to force manufacture of tens of thousands of these heat pumps and ship them to Western Europe in time for the fall. And 5 senators have written a letter to the president, including the 2 from Massachusetts, and apparently there are people in the Biden administration who are taking this relatively seriously.
But the problem, again, is political because we have a good swath of the GOP, it may even be a majority of it, that is in denial about climate change. Joe Manchin who has made millions of dollars on coal and continues to make all this money on coal, held up the entire Build Back Better bill. For my money, if you have such a huge conflict of interest, just like Clarence Thomas should not be able to vote on January 6th, or the President Trump, since his wife is basically a lobbyist for President Trump, Manchin should not be able to vote on something that so directly impacts his pocketbook, just like they shouldn't be able to invest in all, insider trading that Nancy Pelosi came around on, kicking and screaming. Mohammed in Nashua, New Hampshire. Hi.
Hey, Mohammed.
Hi. I just want to say that, in terms of people complaining, I mean, can we at least say the American people are constantly complaining? If you look at the unemployment, I mean, we're really becoming a banana republic in terms of doing what's necessary to change the trajectory of things that matter.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's not unemployment, it's going to be housing. If it's not housing, it's going to be education. They complain and complain. And look at unemployment. We can't even get planes in the sky because there's not enough people to do the jobs. And we're talking about gas prices. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, Mohammed, I think you raised great points. I mean, look at how we behaved ourselves during COVID. People beating each other up over mask wearing.
Or divided over everything. I mean, absolutely everything. Mohammed, I think you really summed up the mess we're in beautifully. Thank you for the call. 877
How can we be
301-8970.
the leaders of the world where we're all a bunch of whiners and crybabies?
Well, I mean, we do deserve better leadership, but I guess you get what you pay for, literally and figuratively, huh?
Well, I think we said this morning. I think where do the great minds in America go now? Do they go into politics?
No, they don't. You know what's also, we haven't talked a lot about this, and we will mention to John King, the likelihood is really good at the moment that both the House and the Senate. The conventional wisdom was the House is gone, the Senate is a toss-up. In the last week or so, a larger number of experts, and we'll see what King says, that the Senate is probably shot for the Democrats too. You know what that means for the last 2 years of Biden's term in office? Is if people are complaining that a lot of things that matter didn't get done, like the child tax credit and the climate change provisions, and I could go down a list for an hour. You know how much is going to get done in the next 2 years?
You have to look, and I sound like I'm always trashing the GOP, but I'm trashing the GOP because they're on the wrong side of really every issue, whether it's guns, whether it's help to families.
Not from your position, from the perspective of the American people.
Yeah.
You mean, yes.
Oh, yeah. I think people are finally, better late than never, getting on board about climate change. They're climate change deniers, a lot of these people. So it's going to be really, really bad, and we know what the big achievement of Donald Trump's presidency was, giving a massive tax break to millionaires, billionaires, and major corporations. And that was his big achievement, was it not? So I don't know what the next GOP administration will do, but I would imagine it would be, more of the same. We'll pass bills about gay people and trans people.
I don't mean GOP administration. I mean a Democratic president with two houses controlled by the Republicans, considering their reluctance to support anything that Joe Biden supports. It means a total paralysis for 2 years, no?
Kevin from Randolph. Yes, it does. Kevin from Randolph.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Listen, I just have a practical, no, I won't call it a solution, something to make the increase in grocery prices less severe.
We're ready.
I do all the shopping in my house. I'm the cook. I do the grocery shopping. Typically, over the years, I've gone once a week, and the last year or so, I would say I spend about $125 a week.
Mm-hmm.
Lately, or in the last few months, I've started going every other week, and I don't hold back, and I don't restrict my spending. I just get whatever the hell I need to buy, and I buy it, and I wind up walking out of the store, and I've spent $180 or $190 or $175. You wind up, I'm spending less money on groceries.
Why?
By going every other week. Because you have fewer opportunities to make impulse purchases.
That's interesting.
You're not going to look at that jar of peanut butter and say, maybe I'll grab a jar of peanut butter. You're not going to do that every week. You're going to do it every other week. It's just, when you go through a grocery store, probably, well, for me, I would say 30% of the stuff I would typically buy, I don't really need that week. But you buy it because you're there and you see it.
Kevin, you're a genius. By the way, in all seriousness, that is really smart. When you first said it, I did say, it's ridiculous. But you're right, so much is impulse buying. And if you only have one shot at impulse buying rather than two, by definition, you're going to do better. Kevin, that's great. You know what? Thank you for the call. You know what I do, which makes no sense, unlike Kevin?
What?
I make a fine salary, so I'm not affected nearly as much as the average American is by this.
But you also work 2 jobs,
Well,
Jim.
when I go to the gas station, you know what I do now? Don't even, on my honor, how pathetic is this? I don't fill up my tank all the way. To what end? I mean, so what is the notion? Oh, if you only get 3/4, what does that mean? You're not going to have to fill up the rest of it? It's insane. But Kevin's idea, were you listening to that? That is really smart, is reduce the opportunities for impulse buying, which is a critical piece of what we all do. I love that. That was really brilliant.
Let's squeeze in a real quick one because you have somebody going to defend Joe Biden. That's Lee from West Newbury. Thank you for calling,
You have
Lee.
a minute, Lee. Thanks.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to say I think what I wish is that you guys would please explain and contextualize why prices are higher. For example, I didn't hear you mention today that you didn't mention that gas prices are higher because oil companies are gouging us.
Good point.
They're using this opportunity to gouge us. And I really feel like you're not fair to Biden or the Democrats because you never defend them.
Well, first of all, our job, Lee, with all due respect, is not to defend anybody. Our job, we believe, is to tell the facts as we know them. I'm not, as Margery nodded in agreement when you talked about price gouging. I'm no defenders of the gas companies, but I think there's more to it than that. And the issue, by the way, is not whether Biden could fix it. The issue is he going to be blamed for it? And what I was trying to say before, apparently not very effectively, is people don't look at big picture, economy booming, jobs created at a record number. They look at how their pocketbook is affected. That's history, and unfortunately, it's not good. But we'll take what you said to heart, Lee. Thank you very much for the call. We appreciate it.
Okay, coming up, we're going to be joined by Simmons University President Lynn Wooten here at the library. She is next. She's got a lot of stuff going on over there, including this great leadership conference. We're going to talk to her about that and what else is going on with Simmons and her new presidency. Lee Wooten next, 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
I'm Frank Oglesby, voice of the T. The doors are opening for Smart Conversation with Jim Braude and Margery Egan on Boston Public Radio. Local perspective, local voices. Welcome aboard, Boston's local NPR.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and Blue Zone products. Locally manufactured, Blue Zone germicidal UVC air cleaners are designed to kill airborne viruses and help provide offices and schools protection when the masks come off. BlueZoneFresh.com. For weeks, people have been wondering what led Vladimir Putin to invade Ukraine. Find out what events, grievances, and conflicts shaped him on Frontline, Putin's Road to War. Tonight at 10 on GBH2.
I'm Jen White, host of 1A, and this is 89.7 WGBH, WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Ahead on Boston Public Radio, we're live at the Boston Public Library today, starting our second hour with Simmons University President Lynn Wooten. We'll be speaking with her ahead of a conference that Simmons is hosting on women in leadership. She's also got a new
Radio 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. New York City police are investigating a mass shooting in Brooklyn during this morning's commute. They say 13 people were wounded. 5 of them were found shot on a subway train platform. Police say the attacker filled the train with smoke and opened fire. The suspect remains at large. From member station WNYC, Stephen Nesson spoke to NPR earlier today about reaction from commuters.
Well, the woman I spoke with and other folks, it was quite shocking. Of course, anytime there's a shooting, it's shocking. But this is not like a high profile, it's not like Times Square or any of the places where you would think like there might be an incident. This is a sleepy kind of working class immigrant neighborhood. Folks were surprised. On the other hand, as you probably know, there is an uptick in crime in the city. There has been an uptick in shootings as well, several fatal. And the subways also have been a focus point for several high-profile attacks.
Stephen Nesson with member station WNYC. New York's lieutenant governor has been arrested as part of a federal corruption investigation. From member station WAMC, Ian Pickus has details.
The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York says Democrat Brian Benjamin is facing bribery, fraud, and other charges. He's accused of participating in a fundraising scheme to steer $50,000 in state funds to a real estate developer in exchange for donations to Benjamin's 2021 campaign for New York City Comptroller. The former state senator from Manhattan joined Governor Kathy Hochul's administration in September after she took over when former Governor Andrew Cuomo resigned. State Republican Assembly Minority Leader Will Barclay says Benjamin must resign.
It's pretty substantial. I don't know how you can go forward with your job with this cloud over you.
The developer, Gerald Migdal, was indicted last year in the scheme. For NPR News, I'm Ian Pickus in Albany.
And now to Ukraine, where Russian troops continue their buildup in the eastern part of the country. Meanwhile, an estimated 10 million civilians have fled. NPR's Tim Mack reports the United Nations believes the war has caused thousands of casualties since it began 7 weeks ago.
The UN High Commission for Human Rights says that more than 1,800 civilians have been killed since the invasion began on February 24th. That's in addition to the nearly 2,500 injured civilians the organization has so far documented. The office acknowledges actual figures for civilian casualties are likely to be, quote, considerably higher. And that's due to the difficulty of collecting information from areas where heavy fighting continues to occur. Most of these casualties, the UN said, was caused by explosive weapons like artillery and rocket systems, as well as missile and airstrikes. The United Nations body also noted a report by Ukraine's prosecutor general, which finds 183 children have been killed as of Monday. Tim Mack, NPR News, Lviv.
It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro in Brookline. Transit police with the MBTA have beefed up security to make sure Boston commuters are safe following a shooting in at a Brooklyn, New York subway station earlier this morning. First responders in New York also found explosives when they arrived on the scene. Police say a man wearing a gas mask and an orange vest was seen fleeing from the scene, but so far no arrests have been made. Meanwhile, a spokesperson at the MBTA says, quote, at this time, there is no evidence, credible or otherwise, to suggest the MBTA system is a potential target, unquote. Rising cases of COVID in Europe have forced the Boston Symphony Orchestra to cancel its European tour of Germany, Austria, and France. And not only that, but the New York Times says a recently reported surge in cases among BSO musicians and members of the Tanglewood Festival Chorus have forced the artists to hunker down. All Boston Symphony Orchestra performers are required to be vaccinated and boosted, plus some members are tested daily, while others are tested twice a week. The Times says the city of Philadelphia announced yesterday that it's planning to reinstate its indoor mask mandate next week, making it the first major U.S. city to do so. In sports, it's the Red Sox and Tigers playing Game 2 of their series this afternoon. First pitch is at 1:10. The Bruins host St. Louis at the Garden tonight. Puck drops at 7, and we are looking at some rain today. Cloudy skies, 54 degrees outside our studios right now. This is GBH News. I'm Henry Santoro.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include C3AI. C3AI software enables organizations to use artificial intelligence at enterprise scale, solving previously unsolvable problems. C3AI is enterprise AI.
It's Jim Browdy. I am Margery Egan. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live as we do every Tuesday and Friday from the Boston Public Library. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Margie. We're also live streaming on YouTube. You can check us out at youtube.com/GBH News. Joining us now here at the library is Lynn Wooten, who is the president of Simmons University. Yesterday, after serving as president since early 2020, she was officially inaugurated, delayed due to COVID. And she has a book coming out, I think, tomorrow, a huge leadership conference also tomorrow. Hell of a week, Lynn Wooten. Welcome to the show.
Yes, it is the Simmons Week. We are celebrating.
Before we get to content, you're a Philadelphia kid,
I am a Philadelphia, born and raised.
So am I. From where?
From West Oak Lane and went to Girls High. Where'd you go?
Central High School, right down the block.
He went to my brother's school, yes.
I'm a tad older than you, but
yes.
Girls High, still all girls, right?
Girls High is still all girls, and one of the reasons why I was attracted to Simmons, because I know the value of a women's-centered organization.
Well, we're going to talk about that in a
That's funny
second.
you should mention that, because he and I fight about that all the time, even though his daughter went to Smith College, which is all women. And you notice, when you look at women who do great things, how many of them come from women's schools?
A lot of them come from women's schools. And he knows when he was at Central, you walked down the hill every day to see the girls, didn't you?
I spent all day seeing the girls. But can I tell you something? We do argue about this, and despite the fact that my kid graduated from Smith, and I was really proud of her, my older daughter, my position on women's only education, even though I hear and read all the things that Margery talks about, and I'm sure you would agree with, is it's not the real world. And while I read all these things about how it strengthens young women so they come out as these fully formed individuals, my concern is, but that's not the world that they enter when they graduate. Where am I wrong?
So it is the real world in that it gives women a safe space to develop as leaders and then go out and unleash them. So spending 4 years at a women's centered college, what we know from the research is they feel more empowered, they can shine in the classroom, and they're better prepared for their career. And they go out there in Boston every day, and it's a co-ed world. And their internships, their work experience, but having those classrooms and those co-curricular activities where women are center stage make a difference.
Is that part of why you came here, by the way?
It is why I came here. My girl-sized days, I knew the power. I went to a historically black undergrad, which is very similar to a women's-centered. And having those safe spaces from people from underrepresented and under-resourced backgrounds make a difference.
Yeah, I started at a women's college, and I did leave to get a date, but I do remember you really notice the contrast.
Right.
You notice that at the women's school, it's run by women for women.
Exactly.
Then you get to the co-ed school, and the boys have the big, huge gym, and the girls have the little gym, and the boys never shut up in class, and the women get shut down all the time. So I'm with you. I think it's absolutely huge.
It is huge. I was just on a panel last week for the Women's College Consortium about women in STEM and why going to a women's college makes a difference. And starting at third grade, young girls lose their confidence in math because the boys take over.
Why are you looking at me when you say that? Is there a reason for this, Lynn Wooten? So how was yesterday, by the way?
Oh, yesterday was magical. It was really, our theme was when Simmons leads, the world works better. And we really celebrated John Simmons, who was a Renaissance man and an ally like you.
That's what you're saying. So for those who don't know, we obviously know all women. Fill in a few blanks about Simmons for listeners.
Yeah, Simmons was founded in 1899, and I don't know how many Bostonians know about John Simmons. He made his money from the ready-made suit for men. And men, before that, had to buy tailored suits. And John Simmons had lots of women in his franchise who were sewing these suits. And he realized that they were uneducated. And so he left his bequest so that women could be empowered and educated with a liberal arts education that emphasized professional education also. So fast forward today, Simmons is still a women-identified undergrad, but we also have lots of co-ed grad programs, nursing, social work, library science, children's literature. And even in undergrad, our number one major is nursing. But we used to have home economics. We used to have an MBA program. And so it's those things where the foundation is liberal arts, but also a professional education.
What happened to your Philadelphia accent, by the way? I hate to obsess, but what's with you?
You know what it is, right? I left Philadelphia in 1984 and then went to A&T, Duke, Michigan, Florida, Cornell, and I lost my Philadelphia accent. But I'm hoping to get a Boston accent.
Well, we hope you do too.
Before we move on, we're talking about single-sex education. Talk about going to an historically black college, because I think that the analogy is...
The analogy is there. And, it is... What I say is this is the year or the era of HBCUs, and I also wanted to be the year of women's colleges. So when I was at Girls High, my first choice was Georgetown, and I'm an accounting major. But North Carolina A&T found me, and my parents said they were going because they gave me a full scholarship. And
Good reason.
And so when I got there, once again, it was this safe space that really helped me navigate my racial identity. It was a place where the motto was similar to Simmons, lift as we climb.
Yeah.
And it set me on the path for the career that I am in today.
You know, Lift as We Climb is very similar to the title of your book that's coming out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Achieve and Strive.
Arrive and
Thrive.
Arrive and
Excuse me.
Thrive. And it came out today.
It did, came out today. My
yeah.
apologies. Fill us in. What are you talking about in the book?
So Arrive and Thrive is co-authored with the CEO of our Institute for Inclusive Leadership at Simmons and the managing partner, Janet Fowley, at Deloitte. And we started this project during the beginning of my presidency because we wanted a book where women could really think about, how do I create these continuous cycles throughout my career of arriving and thriving? What does it take to break the C-suite? And the C-suite in the nonprofit sector, entrepreneurship, and the corporate sector. So the foreword is by Andrea Noé, the former CEO of PepsiCo, who is an amazing woman.
First Fortune 500 woman of color, is
yes,
that right?
Yeah. Yep. And so we have 7 practices about what we think. We interviewed women from all different sectors. So we have to talk about resiliency, being authentic, showing up to be your best self, having a vision, because we know that men don't think women have a vision in the workplace. And what does it take to have a vision? Courage. How do you build that winning team? And then inclusive excellence.
We're talking to Lynn Wooten. She's the president of Simmons College. She just
Simmons University.
Simmons University, excuse me. Just had her investiture. It's hard to say. Investiture yesterday. The book's come out today. And tell us while we're on the busy week about this incredible leadership conference you're having. This has been every year.
This is the 43rd year.
Yeah, okay.
And this is how I knew Simmons. I'm a business school professor by training who does work on leadership. And so I've known Simmons for 3 decades now and about the conference. As you may recall, Simmons had the only women-centric MBA program. And part of that, we used to raise scholarships. We started the conference to raise scholarships. It's now birthed into this huge conference where we've had Michelle Obama and various speakers. And this year, we have Amanda Gorman, Brene Brown, and Simone Biles. And the theme is courage and connection. Coming out of this pandemic, and I'm putting that in air quotes, we think that it's really important for women leaders to think about, how do I chart a course where I have courage? And then how do I build the connections in community?
You know, I hate when you're talking about such lofty things. I hate to get down to groupie level, but you interviewed Amanda Gorman.
God.
Could you explain to people? Well, most of us only know her from that incredible stage where she, exploded on the scene. Yeah. What's she like one-to-one?
You know, my team was really nervous about interviewing Amanda Gorman. And I was like, I got this. I have kids this age. My whole life I've been around 20-year-olds. Amanda Gorman is everything that you see, an authentic, brilliant leader. She's going to do a poem tomorrow that she wrote for the conference that's relevant to it. But she really did talk about courage and growing up with a speech impediment and how she had to overcome it. She talked about the women in her life and how they motivated and inspired her. We talked about having insomnia and this notion of that when your brain is always working. And I don't know if anybody saw, but she was on Sesame Street a couple weeks ago.
No, I did not see that.
Yes, she was. And the word of the day that she was celebrating was being an upstander and how we need to have the courage to stand up for people.
By the way, my daughter was the letter K about 25 years ago, and we talk about it to this day. You don't forget your Sesame Street appearances.
I did see Amanda Gorman in Vogue, though. I'm a superficial person, and let me tell you, she looked spectacular.
So tell us more about this. By the way, it's not just those 3 high-profile women you mentioned. It's dozens. And this is open to the public.
This conference is open to the public. People can still register. It is a virtual conference. We have thousands of women from, like I said, coming around all different ages, all different sectors. It's a day for women to take off and to invest in their self-development, their career development, and continuous learning. And so we're going to be talking about what does it mean to arrive and thrive? How do you show up with your best self? When you're in your career, making those courageous decisions, I think about the hard decisions, when to say yes and when to say no. The importance of having a personal board of directors and connections and networks we're going to be talking about. So it's going to be a great day.
So before we move on, how do we do this? How do people do this?
Right, so they can go to simmons.edu and it'll take them to the conference registration.
Okay, great, thank you.
You've mentioned this best self thing a couple of times. What does that mean? Translate that for
us. The best self means that all of us have superpowers, and we're only going to be able to do our professional calling if we can show up and be our best self. So what I say is, you have to know your strengths, Jim. So I joked that we were joking yesterday. I will never have physical education as my strength. At Girls High, it's the only thing I got a C in. It's the only C I got in my whole life. Okay, that's not my
I
strength.
was the only kid who couldn't climb the rope at
Right.
Central High.
I couldn't
Talk
climb the
about
rope.
horrible.
Right. So you have to know your strengths. You have to own your identity and your origin story, right? And you have to know your values. And when you have those things and invest in the learning that you need for your profession, you're able to show up as your best self. It also requires that we choose careers and organizations that are aligned with our best selves so that we can elevate it more.
We're talking to Lynn Wooten. She's the president of Simmons University. We talked just the other day about college costs and the fight about getting rid of the student debt, and that is going nowhere at the moment. But explain to people why it is that college has become so much more expensive than it used to be. You have to have a lot more administrators than ever. That's part of it, I think, isn't it?
I do. Like I said, I came to college in 1984, and I think my college tuition back then was probably $5,000. The average cost now is $40,000 or $50,000. Sadly, also to say, most people don't know, it's women of color who have the most college debt because they value education. And so my mother called me one day and said, my MBA is from Duke, and she said, do you know that Duke University costs about $80,000 now? And I said, yeah, because your grandchildren are at colleges that are that expensive too. And so she said, well, why is that? Colleges are very lots of administrative costs. We have to have counselors for therapy now, public health officers, co-curricular activities, the upward costs for paying professors. I mean, they are expensive infrastructures. And so the tuition that people pay don't even cover the costs, the buildings, the gyms. I mean, have you been on a college campus and see all the amenities we have now?
Yes. Yeah.
The cafeterias.
But she would argue, you would argue that the kids don't need all those amenities.
I think that
there's as much for the parents.
I think there's a competition. We were talking about this the other day, and you go to some of these, and my children are out of college now, but when I did the tour like 5-10 years ago, you go to Middlebury, for example, they had a cafeteria that was open until 2 o'clock in the morning, and they had a million different kind of ethnic foods you could eat.
Have vegan, stir-fried, gluten-free.
Exactly. But is that because you have to compete, or is that because our expectations have gone through the roof, or what is that about?
The expectations have gone through the roof, and students expect it. I mean, they just expect all these things that you saw in the cafeteria, having a gym, having therapists on campus, academic advising, leadership programming, the expectation to compete.
Yeah.
And so it's supply and demand.
So you must talk about this with your colleagues a lot. What do we need to do about student debt or affordability? Does the government need to be much more involved, or what?
Oh, most definitely. I just came from a convening of presidents last week of the Aspen Institute, and we're committed to accessibility. 133 colleges want to make sure we all have Pell-eligible students who can afford to go to our colleges and graduate successfully. And what I talked about were two things. The model is broken, especially for small private colleges like Simmons, who don't get a lot of government funding, who are financing education through our scholarship and endowment for lots of young people. So we're forgetting the model is broken, number one. And two, we have to ensure experiential equity. And that is that everyone who comes to college needs to make sure they get a return on their investment while they're there and when they leave, so they can afford it.
About 2 weeks ago, standing exactly where you were sitting, Lynn Wooten, was Elizabeth Warren, and making the case, as she always does relentlessly, that not only does Joe Biden have the power to forgive student loans, but 10,000 is not enough. 50,000 should be the level.
Exactly.
We talked about it with our listeners a few days later, and the opposition came from two fronts. One, sort of a selfish opposition, which was, I paid off my loans, or my parents did, so why should they get what I don't? But the second argument was it gives cover for schools to just raise tuition even more than they have. How do you respond to both of those?
Yeah, just because a lot of people are fortunate to pay off their loans, but other people are not. And college debt is the biggest one now. And we want people to be successful. We have to think of ways to either give them scholarships and financial aid or ways to pay off their loans. Now, you have some programs like, if you do public service, but we need more programs like that where people give back to society and those type of programs. And I don't think it is covered erased tuition because I like to think all universities really lead with integrity. And our tuition is really set on our expenses. We're nonprofit organizations. We're just trying to, make ends meet.
So I want to know, I saw you're the president of Simmons University, and you're on about like 19 other boards, and you've got 2 kids, you
the
said.
First thing she
the
said
first thing I said,
this morning.
how does this woman do this? You're on the board of GBH
I
here.
am
That's
on the
right.
board
so
of GBH.
we have to behave ourselves here. We don't
Yep.
want to get in trouble with the board member here.
Ann Fudge is my mentor. So
Yeah.
Chair of the board. She is your mentor?
And a Simmons alum.
I didn't know that.
Yes, Ann is a Simmons
She's the
alum.
chair of our board
Yes.
for those people who do
So,
not know.
but
Yeah.
seriously, how
Wow.
that's a lot to manage. How do you do this?
So-
you take a time management course in business school?
I am obsessed with time management, but I have a great life partner who has supported me. I have a village who has helped me raise my kids and now helping my aunt and uncle helping me taking care of my elder care mother. And I am really good in time management. And I don't sleep a lot, but it's my village and my family and friends.
How do you get good at time management? Is there a book we should go out and buy?
Well, you got to buy Arrive and Thrive first. But
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
It's out today, by the way. I don't know
Okay,
if
it's
you
out
knew,
today.
but yes.
Arrive and Thrive.
But lots of lists. My team manages my calendar. I'm very disciplined also, extremely.
Yeah.
And my friends will tell you, all my life I've been this way. So my daughter said, were you ever a child?
Okay.
So, Lynn Wooten, can we talk about a little conundrum that Simmons got involved in pre your arrival? They created, with much fanfare, the Gwen Ifill College of Media Arts and Humanities.
Yes.
And as I think probably a lot of people know, everybody knows, obviously, who the great Gwen Ifill was, much to the amazement of a lot of people, including those of us who have nothing to do with Simmons other than admiring at arm's length, not just the finalist, but the ultimate person selected to run the Gwen Ifill College of et cetera, was a white guy.
Right.
Who just resigned, I guess, this month. Am I right about that?
Yes, he did, Dean.
How much? You were obviously elsewhere when this
I was at
happened.
Cornell.
What was your reaction to
So-
this decision?
I understand how search processes go, right? And that they had a search process where they thought they hired the best candidate. But with hindsight now, I think we look at it and we have to think about, okay, there are lots of attributes that we need for a candidate. And there are lots of people who work in a university. And how do we elevate inclusion? How do we respect diversity and ensure that our alum and our student bodies have people that look like them? And that's why the Gwen Ifill News made us.
You know, we both have great admiration for Helen Drynan. We had some.
Helen is
Would you have
amazing.
allowed this had this happened? I know you don't want to answer this, but you're here. Come on. Would you have allowed this if you were? Who are you looking at?
This is right. I wasn't there, but I can say that this is my philosophy. My philosophy is every search that I lead, I think about what the school or the institution needs at this time. I ensure that we have a diverse pool, and I align it with the mission. And so I wasn't there, but I do walk a tight line about everything I do, from the caterers to the deans to the provosts. I want to make sure we have a diverse pool, align with the mission, and someone who's going to elevate Simmons.
By the way, we should make clear, if you're just listening on the radio and not watching on YouTube, 2 years ago, Simmons University chose a black woman to be their president, being Lynn Wooten, who is sitting with us here today.
Okay, so I've got a very basic question as we get to the end of this. What does a college president do or a university president do? What do you do?
What do I do? Oh, I am a lot. Well, I'm a strategist.
Yeah.
The last 2 years, I have been a crisis manager and a public health officer. My biggest job, I think, is creating transformational places for our students and the people who work at Simmons and building a winning team. That's my biggest job.
You know, you seem, we met you for the first time today. We've known about you for the last couple of years. Are you as calm in real life as you appear to be now? Because I have to say, I can't imagine a more stressful job than what you do
she's
for
very
a living.
disciplined. She makes lots of lists. For her staff makes her lots of lists.
I make a lot of lists, and I'm not as calm as you are. Are you as calm in life as you are here?
I am calm in life, except when I'm talking to my 2 children. Yesterday, someone said, your mom is the most wonderful person. She's always calm. And they both looked at each other and rolled their eyes.
Fair enough. It's great to meet you. We wish you a lot of luck, and congratulations on the book, the installation, and the leadership conference.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I want to make sure we get this right. You just go to simmons.edu, and then you look for the conference registration.
Yep, you look for the conference.
And then you can see all these incredible women, including Simone Biles we talked about. That's
Amanda Gorman.
Amanda
Gorman.
Change. Simmons Leadership Conference, we're told, is now closed, but if people still want to register, they still can by emailing. Could you get Kerry, Kerry, .seitz. Let me repeat it, Kerry.seitz at simmons.edu.
And I'm going to make it simpler for people, or president@simmons.edu, and my team will make sure that we direct them to get registered.
President at Simmons.edu. You know the president, obviously.
Yeah, I do. I know. She's my best friend, Jim.
I've heard really good things about her. Went to Girls High, didn't you?
Went to Girls High.
Great to meet you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you very
so
much for
much.
joining us. Lynn Wooten is the 9th president of Simmons University. We thank her very much for taking the time to be with us. Okay, when we come back, our sports authority, Trenni Kusnierek, will join us to discuss one of the quirkier ways, I should say, that human marks the end of winter. I've never heard of this. The Ninana Ice Classic, where residents of Alaska take bets on whether how the river ice, or when the river ice finally breaks up. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a lot more with Trenni Kusnierek. She is next on 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live, as we do every Tuesday and Friday, from the Boston Public Library.
A morning edition with Paris and Jeremy is a conversation that I think you can feel like you're part of.
It's a time where you get all the news you need to start your day, and it's a place where you can hear perspectives that are similar or different to your own, and perspectives that may surprise you, stories that may surprise you.
Start your day with us. GBH's Morning Edition with Paris Alston and Jeremy Siegel, only on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Be revolutionary. UMass is the Commonwealth's flagship public research university and committed to the relentless pursuit of progress. Learn more at umass.edu/gbh. And Holtzman Medical Group, offering primary care, gastroenterology, and COVID vaccines in Boston, Brookline, and Weymouth. Appointments are available and most insurances are accepted. holtzmanmedical.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim, Brady, and Margery Egan live at the Boston Public Library. We're live streaming also on YouTube at youtube.com/GBH News. Now, if you're from Boston Marathon Monday, and they're setting up everything right outside our window as we speak, might be what marks the end of winter and the beginning of spring. But in Alaska, it's something called the Ninana, did I pronounce it right? I think so. The Ninana Ice Classic.
Every year, the people in the small Alaskan town of Ninana put a giant wooden tripod on a frozen river and place bets on exactly when the ice will melt enough to break up and the tripod floats downstream. And before we go any further, let me just say, if you are not intrigued by what I just said, turn this show off right now. We decided to place exactly one bet on this year's competition for April 26, 2022 at exactly 2:17 p.m. Why? I just have a really good feeling about it.
That, of course, was John Oliver discussing the event on his show last week. Tonight, we're joined now by Sports Authority Trenni Kusnierek. She's an anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston and a BPR contributor. Hello there, Trenni.
I mean, is this a sports story? I
Yes,
don't know.
yes.
Close
enough.
It's betting,
Close
and there's
enough.
a competition to it, and it is my favorite. Like, I watched this episode of John Oliver.
I love
and
him.
immediately went. We spend a fair amount of time at a establishment called the Sail-Loft.
Oh, very good.
Over in the North End, and I came in and I said, "Have you guys heard of the Ninana Ice Classic?" And they were like, "Who are you? What are you talking about?" But it's this wonder. Like, think about if you live in the middle of Alaska. Like, it's outside of Fairbanks, I think. So I think you like fly into Anchorage or Fairbanks, but then you have to drive inland more, and it's on this like Tiana River, I believe. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce the name of the river. But obviously it freezes over because it's Alaska. And sort of their rite of spring. And it started years ago. In 1917, I believe, they did the first ever like pool where you could guess when the ice would crack and start to move. And they did it to raise money, and they raised $800. And now it's carried on. It's this tradition for over 100 years now, right? Like, let's see, if we're from 2022, 125 years. Is that the correct math? Is it
105, but that's okay.
But, oh, yeah, 105.
Yeah.
But
not a math major.
Because you saw John Oliver actually do this. I just read about it. They put a tripod into the ice.
They just put a tripod on the ice.
Okay, on
so
the
ice. It's frozen. It's obviously frozen solid. So you walk out. You can walk. You can drive on the ice. You put a tripod out there, and then they have this crazy like contraptment where it's pulleys and lines and buckets, and when the ice moves, it pulls it all, and then it stops. It's connected to a clock, and it stops the clock at the hour, the minute, and the seconds. And if you guess correctly, and now you might guess correctly along with 150 other people, so then you split the pot. But what I also love about this is like whatever money is left over from splitting the pot, they help pay their expenses, but then they also donate to local charities to help people in the community. And it's so much fun, and I'm so angry at myself. So, I kind of want to go to Alaska now in the middle of winter just so that I can actually write on a piece of paper and place my bet into one of the. It's like a Salvation Army red kettle.
Well,
It's
Mackenzie,
amazing.
our coworker, just told us her statistics teacher in high school in Texas flew up every year to enter the Ninana pool. That is pretty
a cool
impressive.
statistics teacher.
That is.
Listen to how Oliver described this on his show. When the tripod hits 100 feet downriver, it pulls a rope that runs to the tower, which is connected to a hook that pulls off a garbage can filled with Doritos. That releases a basketball, which rolls down a wooden plank and pulls a string attached to a pair of scissors, which cuts a clothesline, which is tied thousands of miles away to the back of Robert De Niro's pants, and then it pulls his pants down. Of course, this is not true, but I mean, he was kind of doing a takeoff on all these shenanigans that has to happen.
Well, because it started 105 years ago. So, like, now you could probably modernize it, but why? Like, the simplicity of it, and this whole thing of, like, not just a community, but an entire, like, state and now nation sort of coming together. And do you know how big the pool was, the pot was last year? $233,000.
Yeah, it was a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. So can you bet from afar?
Oh, sure can, Marjorie. You
Well-
sure can. Do you know, though, that they don't do it? Like, you don't go into a computer system, right, and type it in. Like, they still do it old school. So you have to write it. You can, like, go to a website, fill out a form, and then you mail it to the Ninana Ice Classic.
Did you do this?
I didn't, and I'm so mad. It's like $2.50. It's like the only thing that hasn't gone up with inflation. Like $2. I am going to mark my calendar next year. I believe it goes February. You can start placing your bets in like mid to late February, and then this year the cutoff date was April 5th, and it just like slipped my mind, and I didn't do it. And I just think it's such a cool thing, and it's so in a time when like we're so divided and everything is
this will
so
bring
doom
people together. I
scrolling.
think
Well,
that's
I
true.
think so.
I think
By
it's
the way,
kinda fun.
I don't know if we should announce it now. We were going to wait a couple of months. Marjorie and I will be broadcasting live from the Ninana Ice Classic in 2023.
If you guys do that, I will pay my way and go with you.
Fair enough. We're talking to Trenni Kusnierek.
Okay, let's move on from a great story to a really horrible story. Christopher Gasper had a great piece. He's a great writer in the Globe, talking about this young quarterback, Dwayne Haskins, 24 years old, was apparently hit by a truck. Apparently, he finished third in the Heisman voting back when he was in college.
He's a first round draft pick.
Yeah.
Number 17 overall.
One of the greatest quarterbacks at Ohio State
Right,
I think,
and
ever.
has struggled a little bit in the NFL, but I suppose that's not unique.
No.
So tell us what Gasper was talking about when he referred to these insensitive comments.
So what happened was, in the wake of Dwayne Haskins being killed in a car accident in Florida, it was Saturday morning. I'm watching SportsCenter and some Masters coverage, and they break in with this news coverage, and it struck me even then how so much of the coverage around his death focused on his failings as a quarterback. So it was, here is this young man who was just weeks shy of his 25th birthday, had recently gotten married, was signed by the Steelers, but, he's below on the depth chart to Mitch Trubisky. And he never really panned out in Washington, and people were very excited. And then he just wasn't very good, and he was kind of immature, and he was coming into his maturity. And I remember saying to my fiance that morning as I was watching. I said, God, what a terrible story. And why is this the focus of it? Like, imagine if this was Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady tragically killed somewhere. Like, the focus, I think, would be probably on their legacy on the field, because that's how we know them, but also on their life. And I just felt like, and I'm mad at myself that I didn't have the words and the guts, maybe like Chris Gasper did, to write a story about it or talk about it or push to have it on my show yesterday. And then I saw trending on Twitter that the name Adam Schefter was trending. And when he announced, you know, he is a well-renowned, very well-connected NFL reporter for ESPN. He is known for breaking news. And the way that he announced the death was Dwayne Haskins, 24, first overall draft pick, but I don't want to misquote it, but it was an insensitive way to announce the death of a young man. And Gasper's point in his column is, we treat these guys like commodities. That we have gotten to a point, and I would argue we've gotten to a point not just in athletics but in society, where we only see people for their value to us, or how you can raise, if they have a high profile and they've been quote unquote successful because they've succeeded at sports or on reality television, or they're an Instagram influencer, then they're important, right? But if you haven't done that, it's almost as if your life is less meaningful. But to many people who knew Dwayne Haskins, he didn't have to be a great NFL quarterback to be your son or your daughter or your brother. You know, it's like this way of treating people that their only value is what they offer a business.
Well, I just wondered, and you know much better than I do, but I'm sure there's been a lot of people who have been incredible college athletes and went to the NFL, and it just didn't pan out.
But it's not even relevant. I think the point Gasper is trying to make is, even if you're right, Margery, and it's true, what in the hell does that have to do with the death of a 24-year-old man with a family?
Well, I guess
and people loved him on the day of his
because
death.
I guess that's how he was looking at it, that he was somehow a failure.
But he
in his whole
shouldn't,
life.
is the point.
Well, I know he shouldn't, but I'm saying that's.
And listen, and you guys have had to do breaking news before, and tragic breaking news. If you are on television for sometimes hours, or the radio hours at a time, like, you are going to, it's difficult. It is, like, I also remember saying to my fiance, God, these are the worst stories to cover, because it's so difficult to talk about someone in a sensitive way, and you have to say so much about someone that you don't really know all that well, right? And you don't have a lot of history or biographical information on. But I think what bothered Gasper, and I hope he doesn't mind if I'm speaking on his behalf, and what definitely bothered me was not that was mentioned in an article or mentioned on television, but that it was the literal headline. That when you put out a tweet, your thought isn't just to put tragic news out of South Florida. This is how easy that tweet could have been. Tragic news out of South Florida. Steelers quarterback, formerly of the Washington Redskins and Ohio State University, Dwayne Haskins, has been killed at the age of 24. Stop.
Period. I'm with you.
Full stop. You don't have to go on and add the fact that he hadn't really succeeded at the NFL level, because you know what? And what I think got buried in that story was he was down in South Florida with his Steelers teammates, practicing, going through throwing drills, trying to become a better NFL player. Like, he was working on, and there were some reporters and analysts who pointed that out and who really stressed the fact that he did have some issues early on, some maturity issues. All of that is part of the story. I'm not saying that you gloss over anyone's story when they pass away, but to me, it was the harshness of the headline. Like, you should not lead with the fact that, hey, he died, but, well, he wasn't that good of a quarterback anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, to me, how all of that feels.
I agree with you completely. So can we move to a story that, while painful, has a hero to me? Brian Flores is in the process, in my opinion, of changing the world. We've talked a lot about this. Everybody knows the story. He applied. He used to work for the Patriots as an assistant coach, and he was the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. He applied for the job as head coach of the New York Giants, and Bill Belichick inadvertently sent him a note congratulating on him getting the job, when a different Brian, a white guy, Flores is a black
Brian
guy,
Daboll,
had in fact gotten the job. He filed a lawsuit against the NFL, which most of us thought would end his career. Actually, Pittsburgh yet again had the courage and did the right thing to hire him.
As an assistant, but yes.
The beauty of this story, to me, is there's an update. 2 other coaches have joined his lawsuit, including this guy, Ray Horton. And the significance of this is, because there's a hero in this, Horton applied for the job to be head coach of the Titans, Tennessee Titans. The guy who got the job is a white guy by the name of Mike Mularkey. And in a podcast, I had never heard of any of this.
I hadn't either until
the other day.
Came out.
In a podcast on something called Steelers Realm in 2020, here is the guy who got the job, the white guy, Mike Mularkey, admitting that the hiring process was a sham. Here's Mularkey.
I allowed myself at one point when I was in Tennessee to get caught up in something I regret, and I still regret it. But the ownership there, Amy Adams Strunk and her family came in and told me I was going to be the head coach in 2016 before they went through the Rooney Rule. And so I sat there knowing I was the head coach in 16 as they went through this fake hiring process, knowing a lot of the coaches that they were interviewing, knowing how much they prepared to go through those interviews, knowing that everything they could do, and they had no chance of getting that job.
And by the way, the Rooney, can you explain what the Rooney Rule is?
So the Rooney Rule was implemented 2 decades ago to try and improve the chances of mostly African American men getting an opportunity to coach at the NFL level, because at that point in time, if there had been 1 or 2 black head coaches in the NFL, which, by the way, we always like to remind people, the league is, as player-wise, is 70% black. And they just were not getting head coaching jobs. And so the Rooney Rule was introduced to make it a quote-unquote more level, fair playing field by requiring teams to always interview at least one minority candidate for a head coaching job. But as we're finding in this lawsuit and other people who are coming forward, it's usually just a checking a box. Like, okay, we got to bring this guy in, so let's bring him in. But we know we're gonna hire. Like, no offense to Joe Judge, I'm sure he's a lovely guy, but he was a special teams coordinator for the Patriots, and the Giants, again, go through this whole rigmarole of interviewing all these minority up-and-coming coaching candidates, and they knew the whole time they were just going to give the job to Joe Judge because Bill Belichick told him he was a good coach. He lasted like a year. He was a terrible head coach. He did not have any success with the New York Giants, and it's so frustrating. It has to be so frustrating. And what people will say is, and I know what the detractors listening to this will say, well, it's not Mike Mularkey's fault that he was good at what he was doing and the Titans had decided ahead of time if he was the best person for the job. It's not necessarily a sham, but it is a sham because you're not really you're not even giving these candidates an opportunity. And part of the problem in the NFL is you aren't seeing a lot of black offensive coordinators. Yeah. You're not seeing a lot of black quarterback coaches. And in a league that is predicated now on offense and quarterbacks, that's where you get a lot of your head coaches. And so it's like they're constantly swimming upstream. And it's gross and it's negligent. And I know that the NFL, I think they think they're doing the right thing by constantly, putting these parameters in place to try and make it easier or more attainable for black coaches. But the bottom line is it comes down, you have to have ownership. Like it all starts and ends at the ownership level. And as we sit here right now, and I could be wrong, and I'm sure one of your producers can correct me if they do a quick Google search, but I believe there's only one minority owner in all of the NFL, and that is the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I think you're right. And by the way, I want to lose sight of this Mularkey guy, who I have to admit I never heard of.
So I actually,
this is perfect for this situation, isn't it? Mularkey.
It is a bunch of malarkey. I actually know Mike from when I worked in Pittsburgh. Not well. Like, I don't know if he'd walk in here right now and be like, hey, Trent, how are you? But I covered the Steelers for 5 years early in my career. And
did you have an impression of him?
I thought he was a really lovely, nice guy. Like, he always treated what stuck out to me about a lot of the coaches in the Steelers organization and a lot of the media. And I will never forget this. I mean, when I was working in Pittsburgh, it was 2002 to 2007. So this was before you really had to be quite frank, I was hired because I was a woman and everyone was looking to hire a woman. I was not qualified for the job there. I benefited from a push to get some diversity on the airwaves, and I know that. But I did know football, and I worked really hard to learn the Steelers organization and learn football. And that coaching staff, whether it was Bill Cowher or later Mike Tomlin and his coaches, including Bruce Arians, always treated me with the utmost respect. I never ever felt like I was a female reporter there. I always felt like I was a football reporter, including the journalists there. And I'm still somewhat close to some of the newspaper writers I wrote with. I was the only female in the entire market. And to this day, I think there's only one female on the air in Pittsburgh. So it's a little bit of an antiquated market that way. But in terms of the Steelers, they really were a forward-thinking organization for a long time.
Now, our crack staff has done some reporting and reports that the NFL's only minority owners are Shahid Khan of the Jacksonville Jaguars and Kim Pegula of the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
Khan was born in Pakistan. Pegula is Asian American, but isn't the sole owner. She co-owns a team with her husband.
Yeah, I was going to say that's
Terry
the
Pegula.
Pegula one. I sort of don't count because it's a husband. No offense, but it's a husband-wife team, and it's.
Do you know what else? We missed this. Did you mention Lake Winnipesaukee?
No.
Yeah, our staff also found, I guess a listener, Cabot, wrote in to say Lake Winnipesaukee also has a contest each year where people can guess when the ice out takes place. And this year it was called on April 8th at 5:20 in the afternoon.
Oh.
So,
well, look at that. It's a lot easier to drive to
I'd
Lake
rather go to
Winnipesaukee.
Alaska, though,
I mean,
actually,
I don't know. Yeah.
You go to Vermont. I wonder if they want Lake Champlain. I bet they do. That's a huge lake, right?
I don't know, but you know what? A lake like that might not freeze over.
Yeah.
Like a lake that big, like Lake Michigan never freezes over.
Doesn't?
No, none of those ever freeze over because they're a little bit like, not to get them like geology, they're a little bit like they move. There's so many waves and movement, even though there's not a tide, that it might freeze on the edges. You might get like a cool freeze, but the middle of the Lake Michigan doesn't freeze over.
We're talking to Trenni Kusnierek.
Okay, so
Midwestern native and nowhere of all things.
Yeah,
so,
Great Lakes.
So let's move on to the Masters. It was won by a 25-year-old.
Scotty Scheffler.
Scotty Scheffler, very good family man. We heard about their, his whole family there. But of course, what I'm really interested in is the fact that Tiger Woods I think it was 1 under par the first day.
He had a great first round.
And
he really did.
Clearly, he was in that accident where his bones went through the skin in one of his legs. He thought it had to be amputated. And by the last day, he was limping badly at the end of the Masters.
Did you watch the Masters?
I saw clips of it. I saw the last half hour.
Yes.
Can we play a little sound from him before Trenni gives your thoughts? Here is Woods commenting on the challenges he faced since returning to competitive golf. This is on Sunday.
Never give up. Always chase after your dreams, and I fight each and every day. Each and every day is a challenge. Each and every day presents its own different challenges for all of us. And I wake up and let's start the fight all over again.
By the way, I said the exact same thing on
Every
Sunday
day.
myself. It was incredible. What a coincidence. I have to say,
He's got to fight every day.
virtually everybody was rooting for this guy, even people who couldn't stand Tiger
I was
Woods in
gonna
the
say,
old days.
don't
no?
you feel a little bit like a hypocrite though? We talk all the time on this show about like holding people accountable for their actions and how big superstars get away with things. And Dan Shaughnessy, to his credit, wrote this column. Writes kind of like a miscellaneous news and notes column every Sunday in the Globe. And one of his notes this time was, does no one remember that Tiger Woods, just like the whole, the accident was tragic, but it just sort of got swept under the rug that he was driving, 80 miles an hour, 85 miles an hour, could have killed people, could have killed himself. Toxicology reports just poof into thin air, and we're all like, yay, Tiger! But it was a remarkable comeback, and I don't know what it is about him, but there's something about, I don't know if it's because we understand, his upbringing and how difficult how hard his father was on him, and the barriers he had to break down, and the weight of of 2 races that he had to carry on his shoulders, to come through and be a hero. But it's like, for whatever reason, I find it easier to excuse his transgressions than others, and he's just so talented.
That's it. I think that's it. Because he's just so good. You just can't believe.
But I hate myself for it because I hate when we do this. I hate when we raise someone up like, oh, you're good at golf, so I don't care that
But
you
can separate. Those are not. I love Dan Shaughnessy's writing and his thinking.
So do I.
But they're not mutually exclusive.
They're
you
not.
Can condemn him for some behavior and say, do you
can
remember?
love,
I've mentioned
you can
this
love
before.
the player, but you can love the game but hate the player.
That's
By the way,
right.
it totally relates to the
love
talent.
the sinner, hate the sin.
Do you
That
remember
little good Catholic girl over
years
there.
ago on our old station, Mike Barnacle was supposed to do an hour interview about a management training book written by who? Bill Russell. Barnacle called in sick. We spent an hour with Bill Russell. At the beginning of the hour, he was so disappointed because
yeah.
Barnacle wasn't there.
Yeah.
Who are these two people? And by the end, it was clear he was as happy, I think, as we were. And you know
he
why?
autographed the book
Because we were in the presence
for my son.
We were in the presence of a person who did what he did better than anybody had ever done it. And I think it's the same thing with Woods. We're not in the room with him, but you're watching a genius at what he does.
And to watch someone who clearly was struggling on that last day and watch him dig deep. And even if, like, I think that, to me, the greatest thing about what he did this weekend is a lot of people who are really, really good at something, if they can't do it the best anymore,
they're going to drop out.
Just drop out.
That's exactly
and
what I
he
thought.
did not.
I am 100% with you.
He walked with that limp. Oh, I just spit. Sorry. He walked with that.
okay.
He walked
We all
with that
do it.
limp up the 18th green. He struggled to bend over.
with you.
And he went through and he finished that tournament through the last 18th hole, even though it wasn't his best. And then he said, I had fun.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I had fun. I enjoyed this. I'm not going to be able to golf all the time, but now he's going to go back to St. Andrews. He's going to golf in the Open. I'm really hoping he chooses to golf here as well. At
the Deutsche Bank thing?
No, at the Country Club. The U.S. Open is here this year.
It is?
Yes, the U.S. Open is here at the Country Club. I actually just reached out. NBC has it on their air, so somebody reached out today to ask for some freebies for some tickets. It's here June. It's like the weekend of like June 16th, 17th, 18th, like that. It's like that middle weekend of June. I think it might be Father's Day weekend.
I'm not sure, but they had the Ryder Cup there a few years back.
Yeah, and I've actually I have been to the Country Club once. Yes, I went to the pool and I felt very poor.
What's the membership deal there? Have we talked about this before?
Oh God.
I don't know, but Brookline High School golf team gets to play at the Country Club. So,
oh, really?
Yes, and they had the tryouts there, and I get to go up there.
I hear it's very, I mean, like I said, I went there once. I have friends who are actually, they were like junior members, and now they've stayed on. They're very
gorgeous.
Good golfers. It's gorgeous.
They invited Margery and me to serve at an event, by the way. They said if we need people, you know.
They have curling at the Country
Club. I know they do.
I've probably the most beautiful curling courts ever.
Curling ice.
Curling ice.
I've actually secretly hoped, if anyone from the Country Club is listening, I've always secretly hoped to be invited to curl at the Brookline Country Club.
Well, you know that old line, when the phone doesn't ring, you'll know it's for you. So,
I got
Trenni
invited to curl at the Brookline.
You told me I'm not allowed to say that on the air.
I shouldn't have said it, but I did. I've said
it now.
Wait a
second.
Yeah.
Every time
the
I'm
whole
about
reason
to say
I didn't
this,
say it because I knew that's where it was. Is I thought that was a big secret that we weren't
It
supposed
is a
to
big
tell
secret.
Well, it was a
anyone.
while ago. It was the last Olympics, so I hope the person that invited me isn't listening right now. But it was spectacular.
Maybe they'll invite the both of us before the next Olympics, or maybe when they have an Olympic person in town. You know, because I'm familiar with the Olympic curlers. I think I'd be a great guest.
That hotel that we talked about last week with Christopher Muther down on Cape Cod, the
Pelham something or other.
They have indoor curling
They
there.
do?
It's like a 4 to 5 star hotel now. I don't think it's ice.
Wait for it.
Yeah.
Curling
Hey,
is
before
sweeping
you go,
the nation.
Trenni Kusnierek, we mentioned they're setting up the
Sweeping
stands.
the nation. Oh,
as we speak.
Took me a while.
Thank you. They're setting up the stands as we speak. In fact, they seem to be all set up, at least the ones on Boylston Street, right outside
So
our
exciting.
window.
It's the best.
We had a debate, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, on what day is today? Tuesday? It must have been
Tuesday.
yesterday. Margery and I had a debate about whether or not the marathon had done the right thing. The Globe editorial board editorialized, as did Brett Stevens in the New York Times, against the decision by the BAA to bar runners from Belarus and Russia outright. And Belarusians and Russians who didn't live in Belarus or Russia are permitted to run, but not with not under their country's flag or for their home country. I thought it was the right thing to do, even though it will sweep up some people who don't deserve to be banned. Margery did not. Where are you on this?
It's tough because I always feel for the athletes, right? Like maybe you're an athlete living in Russia who is vehemently against this war, and you know that if you speak out against it, you don't have the money to leave and the means to flee your country, and you know if you speak out against it that you'll go to prison
For 15 years.
For 15 years. But I also understand from the BAA's perspective, how do you separate those? It's such a short amount of time. How do you discern who might be on the side of war or may even be in some way, shape, or form contributing to it? And like I've said on the show before, Jim, I guess I side more with you for the simple fact that Russia takes so much pride in any kind of
exactly
athletic
right.
performance. And when that is taken away from them, to me, that is another sanction against them and saying the world is condemning what you're doing. And it sends a message that your actions affect the people who live in your country.
Yeah, can I add one, before you go, on that note, Margery, I want to add something to the argument I made and the Trenni's making. You watched my show last night where I had these two great people from Yale.
We're going to talk about
Professor
this.
Sonnenfeld and Stephen Tien from Yale, who compiled this list. It was the New York Times the other day, of every single corporation that does business in Russia, whether they left Russia, whether they're pausing their involvement, whether they're staying there, like Koch Industries, which is staying there with no changes at all.
Like
on the other
Coke,
end,
C-O-K-E or
K-O-C-H.
K-O-C-H? Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
But the reason I bring that up is why can't you make the same argument that the hundreds or thousands of employees they're leaving behind in Russia when they leave the country, which is the position that you and I support, many of them may be anti-Putin as well. Why should they suffer by the departure of, for example, Shell? How about that? Shell's losing $5 billion and doing the morally right thing as far as I'm concerned.
And leaving
their
people
workers are going to
unemployed.
get screwed. And my attitude is that's the price of trying to stop a murderous war.
You know, I don't even know what the unemployment situation is in Russia.
I don't know either.
Do you get unemployment from the socialist government there?
I don't know. Whatever they get, they're going to get a hell of a lot less than they get if they're
That's
employed.
a very good question.
Thank you.
I have to think about that.
Okay, when you think about it, get back to
Okay.
me. Will you? Trenni, it's nice to see
Do you have an
you.
answer, Jim? Do you have an answer since you posed the question?
Yeah, the answer is
Then it's
some
breaks?
people are going to get hurt
Okay.
along the way, but the answer is anything you can do to stop this murder on the part of Putin, you got to do it.
Yeah.
Good to see you,
Trenni
Trenni.
Kusnierek, thank you very much. Great to talk to you, as
Bye.
always. Trenni Kusnierek is an anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston and a BPR contributor, and we thank Trenni very much for her time. Up next, GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen joins us. He's going to talk about To Kill a Mockingbird and a lot of great other art going on around town. He also did a great interview with Wahlberg.
He did, Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, that's right, Mark Wahlberg. I always get mixed up the Wahlbergs. It's Mark.
Mark.
We did the interview with. We're going to talk about that with him next. 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library.
Hunters have killed a record number of Yellowstone's wolves. While locally it's politically popular, Yellowstone's top wolf biologist says it's a huge problem.
This winter, what we experienced was a catastrophic mortality.
That story this afternoon on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Comcast. Xfinity Internet is committed to bringing speeds over a gig to power your devices while fitting your needs and a range of budgets. Learn more at xfinity.com/gig. And Celebrity Series, presenting Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, April 28th through May 1st at the Bach Center Wang Theater. New works, Ailey classics, and revelations at every performance. CelebritySeries.org.
Trusted, local news. This is 89.7 WGBH, WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Margery Egan, live from the Boston Public Library and live streaming on YouTube. You can watch us at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now by GBH's Executive Arts Editor and obviously the host of Open Studio. That would be Jared Bowen. Hello, Jared.
Hello, Jim.
Hello, Jared Bowen. So I know that you and Jim had a lovely date to go see To Kill a Mockingbird,
We did.
and that you got to interview on your show Richard Thomas, who plays Atticus Finch in the theatrical adaptation. So before we ask you about it, let's play a little sound from Richard Thomas as Atticus Finch.
He's not a sort of a distant righteous king figure. He's a man going through a real change in his life. Just as the children, the kids are losing their sense of idealism about the world and some of their innocence about the world, he is also learning about the realities of the world that he's lived in and how they come up against his own ideals.
Yeah, that was a great interview. He seems like such a nice guy.
Boy, does he ever.
Incredibly nice guy. Yeah.
Incredibly nice guy. What did you think of To Kill a Mockingbird?
Well, one of the other things he told me in the interview was that he had not read, like probably many of us, To Kill a Mockingbird in a very long time, and obviously we change as we grow older and our perceptions of the world, and so the story changes, and that's what I really took to heart when I saw this with Jim at the Opera House. By the way, it's playing through April 17th. Is that this is so much a story of these young kids and what they're experiencing and how they're forced to suddenly grow old because of what they see in their towns. So to remind people of what this story is, it's set in 1934 in Alabama, and Atticus is really a civil attorney who is implored to take this case of a black man who is facing execution for the rape of a white woman. But he's implored to take this case, and he does, because he just wants to find right in the world because he's so idealistic. And this story is told through the viewpoint of the kids, Jem and Scout, and their friend Dill. And I think one of the great things about this play is that you have adult actors playing the children because they are looking back at their memories. And even the way, Jim, I was thinking about this after, the way they were moving set pieces around. Often you'll see actors do that. It's just how things flow. But it's with the adult actors as children moving the set pieces around, it's like they're orchestrating and reassembling their own memories of the play. And I just found it so profound to look at this time and look at this man who wants to find right in the world and realizing, no, there's not right in the world, and to see these kids have to age very quickly.
You know, one of the things that really strikes out, I assume every single person listening to the show read the book in high school. I think it was required reading, and was one of the most important things I probably ever read. We've all seen Gregory Peck in the movie, which has been around for a long time. What will strike you, I think, first is how the black characters in this play, including Todd Robinson himself, the man accused of rape, and the woman who essentially takes care of the house, are treated totally differently in this version of To Kill a Mockingbird than they were in either the book or the movie. It's sort of striking, isn't it? Well, meaning much more prominent roles from almost no roles.
I think we bring that to bear, absolutely. It's what Aaron Sorkin, who's the playwright of this adaptation, is doing in bringing this to the stage, and obviously with a 21st century sensibility, although this did open on Broadway a few years ago. By the way, it's starting its national tour in Boston, which I think is poignant because it's also very electric. Actors just getting the show up on its feet, and they haven't been on the road, they're not weary yet. But to look at this piece that has already aged itself since it premiered, and we've looked at the whole Black Lives Matter movement and this racial reckoning in this country since the pandemic.
You know, one other thing that I think bears mentioning is Jared and I decided to have a whole night of it. So in addition to going to Kill a Mockingbird, we went to Guy Fieri's, which neither of us had been to before.
All the fattening food.
I have to say, one of the really nice things, I don't know if Jared was aware of this, after you eat, we had to eat fairly quickly because obviously we're on our way to the play, there is a doctor at the door who inserts a stent in one of your arteries so that you know you'll make it through the rest of the night, which was really no charge, by the way.
Oh, well, first of all, I didn't really have an idea of what this place was. Jim just said, let's just try it and see how fun it is. And I guess I didn't understand what the menu would be. Didn't we have trash can nachos?
We did, which literally came out of a trash can. I mean, a small trash can. They dump it upside down. And what did you want to order?
When I did, the buffalo mac and cheese.
The buffalo, that's really good for you too, by the way, trust me.
And then I thought, I'm going to be spending 2.5 hours in a theater. Maybe perhaps that wasn't the wisest thing for me to do.
Well, we'll leave it
Is
at
buffalo mac and cheese got buffalo chicken in it? Or
yes, it does.
Breaded buffalo chicken.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I remember reading
can nachos.
I remember reading the menu in the Globe and thinking, this is not, your doctor would not be happy, right? This is like killer food. This is like high fat.
That's why I mentioned the stint. I mean, it really is, it is deadly stuff, but I have to say, pretty good. There wasn't an ounce left on either of our plates, despite the thing. We're talking
we have to mention the one thing I mentioned to you in the middle of the play. Remember, for people who don't know, there's a sort of a great cameo appearance in this show.
Yes.
That Mary Badham, who played...
This is
great.
Scout,
Yes, I love this.
She played Scout,
Who
got
is
an
so
Oscar nomination,
good.
of course. I mean, so memorable.
Yep.
She is in this production as an elderly racist neighbor, obviously a character so far from who she is as a person, who she played in the film adaptation, but you'll get to see a bit of film history in the show, too.
Do you know, because she had that stunning debut, she was such a great actor that, I don't know how old she was.
Wasn't she
10?
nominated for an Academy
Yes,
Award, I think, as a little kid?
But did she have a continuous acting career, or did she kind of like disappear and then come back for this?
She's gone on to do other things. I was reading a profile of her where she just talked about she's had this great path that's taken her into all different things and doesn't necessarily consider herself an actor, but thought this was a great opportunity.
Well, she was actually, for years, as you know, we talked about this, she was a server at Guy Fieri's, actually. and she's... You knew that, obviously.
Of course. We're talking to GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen. So you had a great interview as well with Mark Wahlberg. He's starring in this. He plays the role of Father Stu, which I guess was a true story. I didn't even know about this. Before we get to the sound from this, I just want to say the orchids in that interview. Were you in a hotel somewhere? That was the most gorgeous
we were
flower
at the
display.
Four Seasons Hotel downtown. Yeah.
Oh my God! I mean, it was just beautiful. But anyway, here's some sound of Jared talking about religious faith with Mark Wahlberg.
How do you use it today? Religion.
Oh, it's my anchor. I mean, it's kind of, it's the thing that keeps me grounded, keeps me focused. I start my day every day getting on my hands and my knees, expressing my gratitude, and I ask for the strength and courage and confidence to do what I'm supposed to be doing and recognize where I should be doing more. And then, of course, with all of my reading and scripture and stuff like that, and then I work out, and I'm usually pretty tired by that point, but I also feel like, okay, I can kind of make it through the day.
This religious thing was pretty intense with it. It was like practically the whole interview. It was really
I thought it was fascinating.
Well,
so did I.
It's very fundamental to who he is. And so he took on this role as Father Stu because a priest out in California pitched him on this story. And the story is about this, as you say, it was a real-life man in Montana who was a boxer, kind of came from rough and tumble beginnings and suffered a lot of physical injuries and didn't want to take on the blue-collar job that probably was in store for him. So he decided to, as he said, cash in his face instead of his fist. And so he moves to California to try to get a job as an actor, chases a woman, and to impress her goes to church, and then ultimately finds religion and becomes a priest. So it couldn't be further away from where he began life. And the second act of the story is so unfortunate that it may be related to the boxing, that he developed a disorder that's not unlike ALS, and so he died very young, and his body just basically gave out on him. So you see the whole arc of this story. But Mark Wahlberg is very attuned to the story, identified a lot with it. He told me, as coming from the rough and tumble streets of Boston, being jailed himself for crimes, and then setting his sights on Hollywood and turning his life around.
One of the great clips you played on your show was him going to, I think, his mother and saying, I'm going to become a priest.
Yeah.
And his mother said, for Halloween? Which I thought was great. By the way, I was a little disappointed in you, even though I thought the interview was impressive too. The fact that he didn't bring up the fact that he's trying to sell his house for $87.5 million.
Well, I read that right after.
Was $87.5 million.
Where's the house?
California somewhere.
Oh my God!
It's got a golf
But I
course.
can
There must
see
be a lot of praying going on in that house.
I guess
Let me
so.
tell you.
I can see
Whoa.
Marky Mark is still working out.
He's very fat. But the other thing he did, and he didn't have to do this because of CGI and prosthetics, he gained 30 pounds to play this role.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Really jowly face in the movie.
What's the most famous example of that ever?
Well, Robert De Niro.
Raging Bull,
Raging
40
Bull.
pounds. Yeah, Robert De Niro.
But you know what's interesting? After a lot of actors do this or lose an incredible amount of weight, and I think I've seen so many interviews where they talk about they wish they had never done it because they feel the effects in their body later on. But he felt he had to understand what this man was bringing to bear by losing his body, the body that had served him for so much of his life. And of course, Mark Wahlberg, again, the same thing, being a model and then an actor. Your body, your face is your life when you're in that world. In the New York Times billboard. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
By the way, I'm currently bulking up for a part 2, but I can't discuss. You know where I'm doing it? Guy Fieri's.
I was going to say after the trash can
Exactly.
nachos.
Yeah,
We're
trash
talking-
can nachos. I can't. That's a very clever idea, though, isn't it?
By the way, we should be clear. The food, I mean, it is not exactly healthy. It is spectacularly tasty. Would you not agree?
Well, I love that we're at the level of our friendship that neither of us pretended we were just going to have a bite. That we hoovered.
Yeah, what'd you have besides the trash can
we've
nachos?
had 2 appetizers, but the appetizers, they're literally like the size of my head.
Really?
I mean, they're huge portions.
Okay.
And there's a lot of fat content, which makes it very appealing.
So tell us about the Turner exhibit at the It's the MFA, right?
Yeah, MFA.
This is a really interesting show because it goes beyond the beauty of Turner that we always recognize, what has made him one of the most extraordinary painters of all time, and many consider the greatest British painter, certainly, who's ever lived. But Turner's modern world, on view at the Museum of Fine Arts through July 10th, takes a look at what he was trying to depict in his painting. So yes, of course, he was so incredibly innovative that there's still the Turner Prize given to contemporary artists, still kind of matching what he was innovating so long ago in the 17 and 1800s. But here is a man who didn't come from privilege like a lot of other painters. He came from a working class family, and so he was very attuned to what was happening in society. So when you look at his pictures, while they're very gorgeous and you see seascapes and landscapes, he's also depicting the brutality of labor and the privilege with the monarchy and the force of nature and then the Napoleonic Wars. I can't help, ever since I've seen this show, of thinking of the images that we're seeing coming out of Ukraine now, and in a sense, this is what Turner was trying to do, that we're talking about something that was so brutal that destroyed people, and he rendered it with such horror on the canvas. So it's called Turner's Modern World because he applied these almost journalistic sensibilities to what he saw, and the show takes us on this arc from you walk into these green walls that might be evocative of the drawing rooms in London, and it moves through, you get this great salon style hang, all of these pictures all over this wall, and then it ends in a very white, modern, contemporary gallery cube, so you get a sense of where he ended up with a lot of paintings that they believe weren't even finished because he wouldn't sign until he was finished. But once you do really close looking here, you see exactly what he was talking about and challenging society by putting this front and center.
How long is this at the MFA?
Through July 10th.
July 10th.
So I got such a kick out of your interview with Napoleon Jones-Henderson from Roxbury when you went to his house, and oh my God, the sewing machine, all the paint, the books everywhere. Tell people about tell us who he is, but also about where he lives before you get to the ICA exhibit. I love this.
Yeah, so he is an artist who has been working for more than 50 years. He started in Chicago as part of the artist collective Afrocobra, which is, let me make sure that I get this right, the African Commune of Bad Relevant Artists, bad meaning good. So he's somebody for whom art has always been central to his life. He works in textiles, and this started with his family, sewing clothes together. They handed down clothes and then studied at Chicago. But then you go to his house right here in Roxbury. He actually lives in the Edward Everett Hale House.
Yeah, famous.
A famous abolitionist. And Napoleon Jones-Henderson told me he feels the spirits of the people who must have gone through that home still infusing his work and his practice. But there is no separation between art and life. So his home is just filled with everything that he uses to work, including the kitchen. He talked about creativity in the kitchen as he's cooking, but he moves from room to room to room. So you just see reams of fabric, and you see the projects that he's working on and sculptures, because it's all one. And these were the principles of Afrocobra. Again, this artist collective that came together really about lifting the majesty of black people and giving positive experiences and having exchanges with the community. So this all leads to this show that's now at the ICA, one of the first major museum retrospectives of his career, where you see the array of textiles that he's created throughout his career.
You know, we have a little sound from him, too, your interview with him, talking about the same principles that you were describing of his work and the work of his artist colleagues in the collective Afrocobra.
We have created a body of work that is based on an aesthetic set of principles that we developed, as well as a philosophical treatise, so to speak, or a manifesto which drove our work. And that manifesto, in a way of speaking, is the elevation of the humanity of African people and to project, if you will, always positive images and works that reflect the beauty and the majesty of African people.
You know, does he live alone?
He has a family.
He does have a family?
He does, yeah.
Wow. Because I was thinking, where does the family go? I mean, everything is right out there. I love the pictures of the stairs with those piles of books on the stairs. They're very tolerant, I guess.
That he uses, and people go to visit him, and he's inspired other artists and younger artists, and he continues to evolve. His latest series of work is a sculpture series called Requiem for Our Ancestors, and you'll find this in the last gallery room of his ICA exhibition, where he builds these shrines. And he was first inspired by the 4 black girls who were killed in the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing in 1963. So he gives them a space, their spirits, to live in these homes that he constructs. But then the bottom of these shrines are these cascading levels of fabric. And they come from a Nigerian tradition that inspired him, where the spirits kind of catch the wind and move the fabric. It's not very windy inside the ICA, so you won't necessarily see that happen. But this is how he thinks and creates.
Are the big museums in town, it's pretty obvious, I guess, giving much more attention and space to local artists?
They are. I definitely see that happening, absolutely. Much more inward looking. And that's been a big criticism of the major museums here, and they have heard that, and they are changing.
So what's coming up this week in Open Studio?
Well, before you do, actually, can you briefly describe us the new repertory theater is re-emerging? Is that not right?
Oh, sorry, I forgot that.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, this is a nice story, because I think that with the pandemic, we saw theater, we saw museums, of course, shut down. They were able to open sooner, and New Repertory Theater was the one major theater that didn't reopen.
Watertown, we're talking about.
In Watertown, yeah. And it had, we now learn it was taking a pause. I think a lot of people, myself included, were skeptical about whether they were going to be returning, but they decided to take the pandemic to do some thinking. Actually, it's not unlike what you were just talking about, Jim, in paying attention to local artists. So they are coming back, but in a very different way. We think of theater as programming a season of 5 or 6 shows, big shows. They're not doing that, so they're creating a storytelling series. They'll do one-off concerts and presentations and Sunday gatherings, but really looking at local artists. They brought in a team of 4 local theater makers who will reconfigure what theater can and should be, smaller runs, rolling ticket basis, so that you're not buying season subscriptions, which many people have said that's only affordable to people who have a higher income. So this is an experiment. We don't really have anything else completely akin to this in the Boston area, so we'll see what happens.
Okay, what's coming up in Open Studio?
I will try to figure out what NFTs are. So we'll explain this with the help of some experts like Sebastian Smee, the Washington Post critic, and George Fifield of Boston Cyber Arts.
Oh, neat.
We'll wade through this and figure out what this is all about.
So you want to give you? I have no I can't even grasp the concept of these non-fungible tokens as art. I don't get it. Do you even?
I understand it more now. We can talk about it next week, or we can talk about it.
Do you understand it, or do you understand it more now?
I understand it more now.
Okay. I mean, then we'll watch.
He's been studying for like a month and a half. You know.
Do you understand anything about art and NFTs?
No. Are you kidding me? Absolutely not.
Can you do a show on Bitcoin next week?
I was going to say,
that to us?
That's why it all comes together. So you can't just understand NFTs. You have to understand cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and how it all intersects, and then ownership of the digital ledgers and.
Well, I'm going to take the day off that you're here next week, so that should be good. Whoever's here in my place will enjoy it.
Thank
Jared,
you very
it's great
much.
to see you. And we really had fun at Mockingbird and Guy
I bet
Fieri's.
you did.
That was a
I
great
gotta get
night.
to Guy Fieri's. It's kind of an experience, I guess, right?
It's worth going.
Jared Bowen is GBH Executive Arts Center, host of Open Studio, which you can catch Fridays on Channel 2 at 8:30 and online at GBH's website and on YouTube as well. Coming up, CNN's John King. Take us to the latest national political headlines. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, and we are broadcasting live as we do every Tuesday and Friday from the Boston Public Library.
You know, Margery.
Thank you to all who donated during our recent membership campaign. Because of your contribution to GBH, we can continue to bring you the world news that is so vital at this time. And now, through our Matching Gifts program, you can double the impact of that donation. Visit gbh.org/matchinggifts to view the list of participating companies. If your employer participates, then your donation could go twice as far. That's gbh.org/matchinggifts.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Unicare, a health partner for the servicemen and women of Massachusetts, providing comprehensive programs and digital tools focused on keeping them healthy and allowing them to get the most out of life. UnicareMass.com. And Blythewald. Daffodils are just the beginning of the blooms, bulbs, and blossoms of spring visitors can experience at Blythewald. You can also have afternoon tea Thursday through Sunday. Learn more at blythewald.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim, Browdy, and Margery, and we're live at the Boston Public Library, as we are every Tuesday and Friday. And we're live streaming on YouTube. You can watch us at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now on Zoom by CNN's John King. John, of course, is CNN's chief national correspondent, host of Inside Politics, weekdays at noon. Hello there, John King.
Hello there. Nice to be with you guys. I
Yeah.
normally say Happy Tuesday, but it's just a sober day in the news. Wow.
Boy, is it
Well,
ever.
it is a sober day in the news. We were watching your show before, as we always do, and I know you focused a lot on what happened in Brooklyn on the subway in New York City. What do we know at this point? I know it's a still developing story, but what do we know?
Well, they're still looking for the suspect, which is most important. Described as a heavy-set black man, about 5'5", was on the train, was wearing a construction vest and a gray sweatshirt. Obviously, if you're running, I suspect that's not the case anymore. So they'll analyze all the video now, and they're trying to find this suspect. And you have the Transit Authority, the New York Police Department, the FBI, State Police, Joint Terrorism Task Force. So all the panoply of partners are involved. I think what's remarkable is, think about this, as a kid who grew up near Shamet Station, rode the Red Line a lot. Just think about this, a crowded subway car, 8:25 in the morning. And the eyewitnesses say the suspect reached into his bag and put on a gas mask, then pulled out a canister and opened a smoke bomb canister. The train car fills up with smoke, and then you start hearing gunfire. 10 people have gunshot injuries, but the fire department saying they believe none of them are life-threatening. 16 people treated for injuries, 10 of them gunshots. At the moment, none of them life-threatening. That in itself is you'd have to say, a minor miracle. But just imagine the harrowing scene of, as the governor said, you're just finally, after 2+ years of, COVID pandemic stress, finally trying to get back to normal. Brooklyn, a ton of people get on those train lines to ride across into Manhattan to go to work and the like. So the investigation continues, but obviously just a horrible morning in New York City. And at a time, it's hard to avoid this. We are in an election year where rising crime is becoming an issue across the country. So you hear both the mayor and the governor of New York using very, very tough words, tough language.
John, speaking of tear gas, there are reports from Ukrainian leaders that the Russians are using chemical weapons in at least one part of Ukraine. Has anybody outside of the Ukrainian government been able to confirm any of that yet?
I know, and I think you make an important point, Jim, because in the fog of war, especially between two parties which have a considerable amount of distrust, we need to be very careful. But local authorities in Mariupol say that people are sick after being exposed to some sort of what they call a poisonous substance. And so we need to see how this plays out. It's noteworthy to me that President Zelensky has not used, he said he's worried about possible chemical attacks. He has not said he believes one has happened yet. So he himself, I think, is showing smart caution. Let people vet this. The United States has offered to help. Australia has offered to help. A couple of other countries, I don't have them all in front of me at the moment, have offered to help in terms of any experts they can have to analyze things on the scene. It has been a fear from the early days of this war. We have seen the use of cluster bombs and other incredibly horrific munitions by the Russians, but it is alleged at the moment. It is not confirmed.
Speaking of Mariupol, depending on one's pronunciation, while the chemical charge, as you say, is not yet confirmed, is there any reason to doubt the stratospheric numbers, 10,000 or more civilians killed, that the mayor is suggesting happened there? I mean, it's unimaginable. What is the word on that?
The local officials say that they have somewhere in the ballpark of 22,000 people last time I looked that they have believed to have been killed in the siege of Mariupol, which is just one of the more modest-sized cities. There are larger cities, obviously, in Ukraine, but it is part of that southeastern belt, if you will. If you go from where the Russian separatists have been, this war did not start 48 days ago. It started 8 years ago. And if you look at where the Russian separatists are in Donetsk and Luhansk, and you follow down to Crimea, which was annexed 8 years ago by the Russians, Mariupol is key to building that land bridge. And the Ukrainian forces and local help have been defiant and resilient, remarkably so. But the complaint in the last 24 hours has been not only that the death toll is rising, but that the Ukrainian forces are running out of supplies to hold off the Russians. So that's one of the places to keep an eye on, obviously, in the next 24, 48 hours.
Well, you know what? We were talking about this earlier this morning. Not that you necessarily announce every weapon you were sending to Ukraine and when you were sending them, but when you heard President Zelensky most recently on 60 Minutes on Sunday talking about the need, and that if we don't get what we need, we can't win. If we get what we need, we can win. So do we know, are we picking up the pace here in terms of giving them what they need? Or you hear about plans to deliver this and plans to deliver that. What's delivered? Do we know?
We don't have an exact accounting, and that is hard. Number one, it's fog of war, and it's different from day to day. Number two, it's different political sensitivities, where there are some people like Slovakia has said, we will give you our S-300, anti-aircraft system, anti-missile and anti-aircraft system. We will give you that because it's Russian-made. The Ukrainians are used to operating it. They don't need training to operate it. Slovakia said, we'll give it to you. We'll give it to you immediately. And we just need the United States or some NATO country to give us some backup with their technology. We know that has happened in the case of at least one unit of the S-300 anti-aircraft, anti-missile going in from Slovakia. Other countries have said, we'll give you two T-72, which again is the genesis of Soviet era tank that the Ukrainians are familiar operating. We know some have gone in. You don't have an exact accounting. People have pressed the Pentagon, which of course is keeping track of what all of these countries are doing, and it's helping with the logistics, whether it's a rail car or a flatbed truck, to move things in. The Pentagon knows, but one of the things it has said, and I understand the politics of this, is it's going to leave it up to the government of Poland or the government of Romania or the government of Slovenia or the government of Slovakia. Some of those countries are much willing to say publicly, this is what we're doing to fight Putin, to help the Ukrainians. Others have more political sensitivities, and they'll say, we're helping, but we're not going to tell you exactly how.
John, I think if there were objective people left in the world of politics or almost anywhere, they would say that Joe Biden's handling of at least the organizing of international forces to oppose what Putin is doing has been arguably his greatest success. Yet the most recent poll I saw this weekend has only 45% of the American people saying he's doing a good job on Ukraine. Why do you think that is?
I think, Jim, this is the legacy of the last at least 3 years of our lives. You could roll the tape back more if you want. But what have we been through in the last 3 years? The turmoil of Trump, the COVID pandemic, and now where I could recite to you a ton of very positive economic statistics. People don't buy it because of inflation. Just the new report today, 8.5% inflation year to year, March to March. You have to go back to when Ronald Reagan was president, to match up those numbers. Wages went up about 5.6% last year. Normally, a president would be doing handstands. To have an economy where wages are growing at that pace, you would think this is fantastic. We're coming out of the pandemic. The economy has wind at its back. Yet, if you got a 5.6% raise and everything costs 8 or 9% more, guess what? You're losing money, even when you thought you were going to be gaining money. And I think almost that dynamic makes it more frustrating. That you're looking at your paycheck and that number's bigger, and yet it's not buying. It's not buying you more. It's actually buying you less. And so I think that's the overwhelming dynamic. Joe Biden is stuck in this COVID exhaustion, economic anxiety, now inflation. And so he's just, and it's a faraway place, asking the American people to spend a lot of time thinking about a faraway place, even though the principle is so critical. Every general you talk to, every foreign policy person who's done this for 20, 30, 40 years of their lives, say this is the most important test of their lifetime. Because if Putin can take Ukraine, they believe he will not stop. It makes no sense to us, of course. It makes no sense. We do not think the Canadians are going to try to take the United States, or the Mexicans are going to try to take the United States, or that we're going to try to take Mexico or Canada. Our brains aren't wired this way. But Putin wants to reassemble the Soviet Union or something like it. And he is hell-bent on doing it. Again, this war started 8 years ago. Then he took a pause when the world slapped him on the wrist, or maybe he had issues to deal with at home, and here he goes again. But why does Biden not get credit? I think people are just exhausted, Jim. Plus we just live in this polarized world where Democrats will give him credit for things and Republicans simply won't.
Well, you know, when you described the confluence of things you just did, John, and I know you've cautioned us through the years we've worked together, polls are just a function of that moment in time. Things change as they do overnight in American and world politics. But on today, whatever today is, April 12th, it seems like this is a prescription for a Republican blowout in the midterm elections, not just in the House, which most experts thought the Republicans would take, but in the Senate as well. Where do you think we are on April 12th?
I think today we are in blowout territory. If the election were tomorrow, the Democrats would lose the House and lose the Senate. I have almost zero doubt about that. Look, we have to go through the primaries. The primaries are just starting. We're just going to get in as we move into the next month or so. We're going to start to deal with the primaries. You have, a Senate race in Pennsylvania where, Trump endorses Dr. Oz as opposed to a hedge fund guy, David McCormick, who a lot of Republicans think is a safer, better, stronger, more reliable, less temperamental, less tape of controversial things they have said in the past. And so we're going to have several of those, right? We're going to go through the Republican primaries. They're going to teach us, A, which candidates are they putting forward in these battleground states? B, is Trump's grip on the party stronger, weaker? Do we not know? We're going to go through that over the next few months. But often, if it's a wave year, Jim, that stuff doesn't matter. In 1994, when Bill Clinton lost the House, it didn't matter that the candidate X or candidate Y was a good candidate. And when this happened to the Tea Party election for Barack Obama, if it's that big of a wave, even good candidates get washed away in the wave. That's where we are today. I know it's a cliche, but it is a long way to November. Mm-hmm. We have to see who the candidates are. And the Democrats will be running against somebody, not a generic Republican or not just an environment. But today, and smart Democrats, including people in the Biden White House, agree with me on this. If you look at the fundamentals today, they are horrible for the Democrats. And they know that's where they start, and so they have a lot of work to do between now and November.
We're talking to John King from CNN. Focus a minute on the Herschel Walker-Raphael Warnock race down in Georgia. For my money, and I don't know a lot about him, but Warnock is a really great speaker, great talker. Herschel Walker, of course, was a star football player. He's in the NFL. He has a little personal baggage there, but Herschel Walker,
like almost strangling his former wife allegedly to death. I mean, like
that's
that
right.
a little.
Yeah, I should have not said it was little. It's pretty major, but Herschel Walker is winning so far in the polls. What does that say?
Well, he has a primary to get through himself, even though he's the Trump-endorsed candidate. So we will watch in these primaries to see, we've talked a lot about, the fights the Democrats fight to pass the Biden agenda and all these fractures within the Democratic Party, all these different groups within the Democratic Party, how complicated the Democratic family is. Again, we're going to have primaries to learn, is there anything to look at, anything more to study in the Republican Party, right? The Cheney primary in Wyoming will be one. Any primary, anywhere you're looking for people just, looking to send Trump a message or send any kind of a message. So we don't know about that part. But to your broader point, look, Georgia's a very, very competitive state. The fact that John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock won those Senate races, that Joe Biden won by just a tiny bit in the presidential race tells you, and that was in a presidential year. So in a midterm year, typically, and I don't know if typically applies anymore. I've said that every Tuesday. I don't know if the old rules apply anymore because we have had several high turnout elections, including the 2018 midterms in recent years, right? Turnout, forgive me, usually drops off hugely in a midterm year. We don't know if that's going to be the case, but the Republican calculation is it will in Georgia, and it's older voters are more reliable. They tend to be Republicans. Younger voters and voters of color often drop off more. Higher percentages of them drop off in a midterm year. So if the overall black turnout in Georgia drops significantly, and then Herschel Walker can pick up just a piece of it away from Warnock because he is a black man, because of his celebrity status in the state as a former football player. If he can pick up just a little bit on the margin, that's why he's leading now. But you mentioned Senator Warnock is a good candidate. He is a good candidate. That is the guy you want on the track in a close race. You want a good candidate. And so that to me is, watch that race, watch the Pennsylvania race. We could pick one or two more, and that will tell you. But Georgia is. I'm always looking for the next fascinating laboratory in American politics, and Georgia is one right now because of the changing demographics. But also remember, you have the hotly contested governor's race there, with again a Brian Kemp running against a Trump-endorsed primary challenger, the former Senator Perdue. So there's a lot. There's everything that Senator Warnock or Herschel Walker, for that matter, if he's the candidate, can control in their own race. and then there's some things that will be out of their control because of the other factors in the state. Marjorie Taylor Greene is also from that state. So that's a I say fun. A lot of people listening are going to say fun. It's not the right word, but that's a fascinating laboratory.
And there was also that call to the Secretary of State, if you want to put everything in one little
right.
pile there. You know,
He's
John,
he's on the ballot too with a Trump opposed primary challenger.
I know that. So we talk about, most of us up here refer to the Washington Post as the Globe South, because virtually all the best staff comes from the Boston Globe. One of the stars is Matt Visor. He used to be at the Globe, and he obviously is at the Washington Post. He wrote a fascinating piece, I don't know if you got to see it, about the incredible relationship between the Secretary of Labor, who just happens to be the former mayor of Boston, and the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Did you happen to take a look at it?
I took a quick look at it, Jim. I was studying for my show today, and the shooting happened, so I haven't read it in depth. But I will tell you, number one, you're right about the Globe South. Number two, Matt is one of the most talented. I still call him young because he's younger than me. So I still call him young, and he better be grateful I called him young. But think about just think about it. Number one, Marty Walsh has done a very good job establishing his stature in the Biden administration. It's just a fact. You like the former mayor or not, that's a fact. He's very well regarded in the administration. Number two, if you're Vice President Harris, there are a lot of questions about you as a national candidate. Your presidential campaign didn't go very well. There's a lot of murmuring and worrying in the Democratic Party. What if President Biden's not a young man? What if he doesn't run for re-election? Is she ready? So if you're Vice President Harris, how did President Biden do it? The black vote and labor unions, right? Remember, he lost Iowa, he lost New Hampshire, he lost Nevada, and he's the president of the United States. He's the president of the United States after those three losses, which normally would wipe you out. There were other dynamics. Trump was the president. We were in the COVID pandemic. It was we need an adult moment. But she's very smart to make very good friends with a guy who is very well plugged in America's labor movement, which is not what it used to be. Not what it used to be, but is still a major force, especially when you're talking about Democratic primaries.
Yeah, but the piece of the story, I don't know if you got to this, John, that most impressed me. I buy all of that, and that's part of Visor's analysis too. But he mentions I think it was a 45-minute meeting, I'm not sure, that Harris and Walsh had. And he talked about how staffers, and I'm sure everybody listening knows this, are always anxious. What do we need to prepare for our boss so that he or she is ready for the meeting? And both sides concluded they didn't need to prepare anything for their bosses because the vice president and the secretary of labor just wanted to get together to talk for 45 minutes, just basically to BS. So it seems to be a legitimate, warm, personal relationship in addition to the strategic value, I guess, to both of them. It's really a remarkable story, actually.
I mean,
oh, go ahead, John. Sorry.
No, again, I haven't gotten to that piece of it. But again, we all know that's who Marty Walsh is.
That's a very good point.
If he is interested in you, he keeps coming back to learn more. That's what he does. He's a people person. And if they just have a personal bond that has almost nothing to do with politics, it's where they met, obviously. Great. But to me, and all these questions about is she doing the right things to grow. A lot of people you talk to, you keep hearing no, or I don't see it, or I'm worried. That would be proof that at least on this one little piece of it, that's a check.
I was just going to ask you that because it does seem as though she has not made a oh wow impression on the country as vice president. I think she
on the president, it appears.
Yeah, and I thought she was a very I was rooting for Val Demings from Florida, very classy, really smart, former police chief in Orlando, African-American woman. Every time I see her on TV, I just think this woman has it, that it. And that never resonated for me with Kamala Harris. So I'm wondering how people think she is doing.
There are a lot of jitters among national Democrats in this town. That doesn't mean they're right. But it's legit that there are a lot of jitters among national Democrats in this town. You've seen the staff turnover. When you see a lot of staff turnover, and especially at a high-level politician's office, people say, well, it's just staff turnover. Well, there's a reason for staff turnover. The principle is the CEO. You can blame the chief of staff if you want. You can blame the communications director if you want. If that's happening, there's a problem in the office. And it either means there's a problem in the office, or in her case, because she answers to the West Wing and the president of the United States, they see a problem.
Yeah.
And they're stirring it up. So this is one of the big evolving questions. I've said this for years that I love covering politics because you get to watch them grow. right? You get to watch them. Bill Clinton lost his first re-election for governor in Arkansas. He would tell you today it made him a better politician.
Yep.
Barack Obama lost to Bobby Rush when he ran for Congress in Chicago.
38 points.
He didn't just lose; he got whooped.
Yeah.
Right? And so sometimes when you get knocked down, certainly in my life, when you get knocked down, it's the getting up part that makes you a better person and a tougher person and hopefully a smarter person. So I watch them all. My test is not who they are today; it's who they are tomorrow. And do you see evidence of growth? And Vice President Harris, to me, is one of the most fascinating subjects to study right now. Just because she's the vice president, and to be fair to her, every vice president takes some of these 2x4s to the head.
Right.
It's just the nature of the job.
John, before you go, speaking of getting knocked down, do you have a bumper sticker in your car that says, wait till next year? Is that what are you taking that approach, or how you doing after 4 games?
We were 1-3 last year, and we had a pretty good run. We were 0-3 to start, and we had a pretty good run. We're 1-3 now. It's Jim, warm up. I'm still. Everything is about whether Chris Sale or Jim Browdy are in the rotation first. I think is that we got some pitching issues. I assume the bats come alive. You can't blame the pitching for yesterday. You're not going to win a lot of baseball games when you score 1 run. You're not going to win a lot of games when you score 1 run. Now you can't blame the bullpen for that. Be patient, my friend. Be patient. Be zen.
Listen to him.
Okay.
John King, it's great to see you.
John
Be
King,
well.
thank you
Talk
so
to you next
much.
week.
Take care, guys.
We've been speaking with John King, CNN's chief national correspondent and host of Inside Politics, which you can see every weekday at noon. We watch it every day on CNN at noon. Coming up, we'll open the lines to hear from you ahead of Boston Blooms tomorrow. Do you know about this? Well, it's an event put on by the city to encourage people to come downtown. They're going to have free coffee. They're going to have food trucks. They're going to have music. They're going to have performances, a beer garden. What do you think? Is this enough to get you downtown? We want to get those stores, get some business back down there. We're going to talk about that next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
For decades, residents of Gordon Plaza in New Orleans have been dealing with the health effects of living on ground that was used as a toxic landfill.
Brain cancer, colon cancer, leukemia, multiple myeloma.
The American dream of homeownership has become a nightmare of illness for these residents. That's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and the Museum of Science, where you can change climate change, a new way to think about climate action. Visitors can see how they can make a difference as we adapt to a changing landscape. Tickets at mos.org. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim, Browdy, and Margery. We're live at the Boston Public Library, and we're live streaming on YouTube. You can watch us at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow, in an effort to bring people back to downtown Boston, as Margery said, Mayor Michelle Wu is running events throughout the day called Boston Blooms. At various locations downtown, you can show up for plant giveaways, for live music, food trucks, free coffee. It's a bid by the mayor to bring foot traffic back to the center of the city after more than 2 years of pandemic-related closures and working remotely. But if you're not in the office, would this be enough to entice you back downtown? And if it isn't enough to get you back, what would be? How are you supporting local businesses? Or are you all just post-pandemic lip service and almost nothing could get you to come into the city to support the independent small businesses and restaurants that used to mean so much to you but are now struggling? The number is 877-301-8970. You can email us. Margery reads all the email at bpr@wgbh.org. I have no idea if this thing is going to work. Good for Wu. When she was with us a couple of weeks ago, she said they had something planned. She didn't want to give us the details, but it's Boston Blooms. There's got to be something, because the reality is people are not going back to the office. And all of these, go down Newbury Street, you still see empty storefronts, small restaurants, all this sort of thing. This has got to jumpstart at least the consciousness of people to go support the places that you used to care a lot about but are hanging by a thread.
Well, when you do walk down Newbury Street, it is really discouraging. I mean, I was just there a week ago. How many stores are boarded up?
I just said that's exactly right.
It's really kind of horrifying. So, yeah, I give her credit. I don't know if it's be enough to get me down there, but I think
a free plant would not give you.
I don't know, a free plant.
You're a big plant woman, aren't you?
I am a big plant woman, but one of the things I think keeps people from downtown is that you either take the T or you're paying a fortune to park. Isn't that a problem going downtown? Plus, everybody gets lost downtown, Jim. You know what I mean? The financial district is very difficult to find. It was way around.
It's a little negative
Mill
attitude,
Street, Broad
isn't it?
Street, State Street. It's kind of all confusing. That's the only place in Boston I really get lost on a regular basis. It's down there. So I don't know. You going? You going?
Boston blooms is all I want to say to you. Yes. The answer is...
You're not going either.
No, excuse me? Who's answering for me? Me or you?
Well, Jim, okay. You going?
Now I am. Yes, as a matter of fact. In all seriousness, don't you feel you sort of... I mean, beyond the fact that it sounds like it's going to be fun. For example, 4 to 8, there's a 7:30 to 10 thing, free coffee, music, etc. 11:30 to 2, another deal. Here's 4 to 8. Beer garden at Downtown Crossing. That sounds pretty good.
Yep.
Lawn games. That's not my kind of thing. Music performances, a mural crew, and a photo booth.
You bring the kids.
Plant giveaway.
Yep.
And another I mean, don't you feel you almost have like an obligation to the city and to these businesses to show you give a damn or no?
I think the next few months are really going to tell us what's going on here.
What do you
Because
mean?
an awful lot of people do not want to go back to work. They certainly don't want to go back to work all the time.
Mhm.
They certainly don't want to go back on Mondays and Fridays. They are used to being at home in their pajamas. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Or less.
What happens going forward. Are people going to return to their own haunts? Are they going to come in and go out to lunch every day? They're going to bring their dry cleaning in with them to the office. They're going to play those. They're going to take the T. They're going to pay those astronomical parking prices.
Or go out of the
downtown.
way, even if you're not going back to your office full time, to patronize businesses, as I've said repeatedly, that mattered a lot to you. So here's the deal. I am going to Boston Blooms tomorrow because I care about the city and its small businesses. Margery is not, because she doesn't. 877-301-8971. We want to know if you even knew about Boston Blooms. Did you know it before?
No.
I heard it on our station this morning.
No, I did
but
not.
Maybe it's because she just announced it yesterday. Mayor Wu did. And two, if you knew about it, well, you know about it now. Are you planning on going out of your way sometime between 7:30 a.m. tomorrow and 8 p.m. tomorrow night to go to Boston Blooms? You should.
There is that great new food court, that high street food court.
There are a lot of good food
that
courts.
Trenni talked about how she went there and it was like absolutely packed with people. That's an indoor thing.
High Street, yeah.
Yes, at High Street, and it's got all sorts of different kind of things to eat there. That's a big attraction down there. You're not far from Faneuil Hall, of course. That's down there as well. So there's a lot of things.
Well, they're going to be these events
I
themselves
know.
are going to be happening.
I know. There's a lot of things to go see downtown, but I just am not sure how everything is going to change.
Well, what would you
post-pandemic.
suggest, well, other than doing something like this, like a major event to attract people? Our number, by the way, is 877-301-8970. What exactly, if you're Mayor Wu, do you do? You can't order people to go back to their offices. Hopefully, little by little, hybrid is going to become the rule.
Difference?
This is the kind of thing that, what?
$5 parking.
Actually, that's a brilliant idea.
Or even
That's
free
a
parking.
brilliant idea.
I mean, how much does it cost you to park? And the government center garage just had a little problem there with the a tragedy there with the
Not
floor.
government center. The wasn't it the
one next to the Suffolk County Courthouse.
Yeah, right.
Isn't that government center
I don't
garage?
know. I don't
I
think
could
so.
be wrong. I'll look it up. But in any case,
Oh, maybe it is. Yeah, maybe it is. Okay.
But I think last
It
time I
is, yeah.
parked there, you just like $35 for like 2
But that's
hours.
just an excuse. We're encouraging
It's not
people.
an excuse.
It is
I
an
think
excuse.
that's a big
Can you
reason
afford
people-
the $35?
Yes, I can.
So
but
why are you not going?
I'm working, Jim.
No, you're not working. Excuse me. The show is over at 2 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
4 to 8. Do you want me to repeat it?
Yep.
You have told me through the
I'm cleaning
years
my
how
sock
much you
drawer.
love lawn games. And this is an opportunity. What is a lawn game, anyway?
I don't know.
Is that like cricket
play
or something?
croquet. You can play croquet.
Okay, 877-301-8970. We need somebody to call to say, Jim, you were doing the principled thing. I know it's really inconvenient for you after a long day's work. You were doing the right thing, and I'm very disappointed in Margery, who is not supporting Boston. Is it Boston Blooms? Boston Blooms, which will be happening tomorrow. You know, speaking of downtown, before we get to the calls in a second, 877-301-8970. You see what my hometown is reinstating a mask mandate? I mean, Philadelphia. Can you imagine if that kind of thing happen here?
Well, I mean, it could happen here. I hope it doesn't happen here, but it could sound happening now. Amber says she's going. She wished she had tomorrow off, so I guess maybe that means she won't go. But
She's
the food
going
trucks,
tomorrow night.
The food trucks sound fantastic. She says, I adore Boston and miss it so much. We were only able to visit twice during the pandemic. Can't wait till July 15th when I can visit the Boston Public Library for my birthday for a live BPR show.
Oh,
That's
great.
That's really wonderful. David says, if you want me back in the office, what you should do is turn all the roads into bus lanes and bike paths. That should increase my commuting time enough to make me desire to get the alone time in my car.
But you're confusing two things.
What?
This is, I assume, an ulterior or a secondary motive on the part of Mayor Wu is to get people, at least part-time, to go back to their offices. Tomorrow's like a day of celebration. The hope, I mean, I assume it's in part, I don't want to speak for her, the pandemic at least is hopefully winding down, even though the national numbers are up. Did you see that this morning? Up 10% over 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
even though the deaths are down dramatically. This is an opportunity for people to get together, have fun, get a free plant, which Margery says she cares about, and sort of reinvigorate the whole downtown thing. We're talking too much. Let's take some calls. Cindy in Rhode Island, are you going to Boston Blooms or not?
I'm not going to Boston Blooms, but I want to encourage everybody else to.
Good.
I wanted to say thank you. I'm in Rhode Island. I won't be able to make it tomorrow, but I love the idea, and I do love the idea of supporting those local businesses,
Yes.
small businesses, and I think a couple great ideas that I heard from you guys.
What are they?
And I wasn't sure if it was Jim or Margery who said it, but free parking, and maybe even shutting down vehicle traffic for a little while to get some walking going on.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Now, Cindy, are you disgusted with Margery's position that she's too selfish to go tomorrow because of the parking costs?
Well, I would say if there's nothing else on her calendar, then yes.
Thank you,
Okay.
Cindy. That was an
I have
excellent,
a lot of
excellent
very
call.
important things on my calendar.
Why don't you list what some of them are, Margery?
I have to wash my hair.
Okay, fine.
After the show. Clean my sock drawer.
877-301-8097.
But it is, I mean, again, I don't want to trash this because I think we do need to do stuff like this. You do need to get people back downtown. They have really,
Get on
really
the damn
suffered
Green
down
Line. It goes right by your house. It goes right downtown. What's the problem? You don't have to spend $35 to park.
there. Okay, you know what, Jim?
Yeah.
I'll meet you there at 6 o'clock tomorrow night, okay? And we'll see who actually shows up.
No, I'm serious. Why wouldn't you just get on the Green Line and not
Why
worry about
wouldn't
the
you
parking?
get on the red line?
Because I spoke to Mayor Wu and I've got a parking spot. So I'm pretty well.
Okay.
Let's go to Dorchester where Carlos is. Carlos, we appreciate your call. Hi.
Hey, Jim and Margery, I love your show.
Thanks.
Thank you for taking my call.
Thank
Sure.
you.
You know, we are going to be there. We're going to hop on the red line
Great.
over here at the Milton stop, and I think the mayor should do this every week. This should be something to get us all back into the city. Some sort of an event at different parts of the city. The Back Bay. I know the North End doesn't need any more walking traffic, but I think that this is something that's great, and she should think about doing this every week.
Well, you know what, Carlos? Since you're a local guy, one of the things I do think is neat that downtown that isn't made enough of is the whole area outside City Hall. You know, that big,
Plaza.
huge plaza space. They had Adirondack chairs there once. Sometimes they had some concerts there and
They
stuff.
were all stolen. They had no.
Yeah, were they stolen? I don't
I don't
know.
know, I'm kidding.
But that could be something that would be sort of a neat thing to have on a regular basis. Someplace you could bring the kids to, someplace you could walk around. And you know what else is a great thing downtown? Well, I don't know if it's technically downtown. Maybe not. The Rose Kennedy Greenway, which
What
if
is
people haven't
downtown? Of course
seen.
it's downtown.
And then it's got that gorgeous waterway, a walkway along the water. And the Rose Kennedy Greenway itself is beautiful. And the flowers are coming out now. And they always have that public art up there.
So maybe you should go.
Yeah.
Hey, Carlos, I want to be clear. Are you going because you're supportive of the city, or are you going because it sounds like fun?
Both.
Okay.
I'm going because it's been a while since we've been on the tee, and I'm going because it sounds like fun.
Great, Carlos. Excellent call. Thank you very much. It's exactly the kind of attitude we're looking for. 877-301-8970. So Margery from Brookline is not going. Let's see if Michael from Brookline is going. Michael, take it away.
Hi, Jim, Margery. Love you guys. You are the best.
Thank you.
Like, Jim, I got to tell you, there is no way I'm going downtown. There is no way. It's brutal. Boston is the most congested city in the country. Look it up. We got to fix the T. We got to make it easy. Even taking the T, I'm looking for $3 single bills. Like, damn, I don't have that. You know, I don't carry money
Michael,
anymore.
I'm about to solve your problem. Zoe, our coworker, just got an email from Blue Bikes that Blue Cross Blue Shield, which owns Blue Bikes, is sponsoring. You ready, Michael? Free rides for Boston Blooms so people like you can bike. You and Margery from Brookline can bike to Boston Blooms.
Oh, yeah.
What do you say to that, Michael?
I'm going to look for you, Jim. All right? I love you guys.
Michael, that was a great call.
So
Thanks.
I want him to send me a picture. I want him to send me a selfie in front of the Boston Blooms thing.
By the way, the
says to
code,
me-
whoa, the
What?
code, if you want that free bike ride on the Blue Bikes, is Blue Blooms, BLUE Blooms. I'm sorry, Margery.
Ken's telling me to stand strong. Don't let that man, that's you, Jim, bully me into this. I'm supposed to represent Rosie the Riveter.
Can I tell you in all seriousness, I cannot tell a lie. I was not intending to go, but it almost is disloyal. We talk all the time about how you have to bring life back to the city and help these businesses. I mean, what kind of frauds are we if we don't show up?
I go to Newbury Street.
Okay, fine. Let's go to Bob in Somerville. You only have a minute, Bob. It's yours. Take it away. Hi.
Hi, I want to talk about a previous giveaway on Boston Common of longleaf pines years ago, 40 years ago or so.
Yeah.
That pine is in my neighbor's yard, 2.5 stories now.
Oh my God! So if you get a plant giveaway tomorrow, 40 years from now, it'll be like a redwood.
You got a little pine plant 40
His
years
neighbor,
ago?
40 years ago.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bob, you are the perfect caller to end this discussion. Get a plant that becomes like a sequoia in Somerville or wherever the hell you live. In all seriousness, some of these callers have the exact right attitude.
Okay.
Except Margery.
Okay.
I'll
Like I
see
said,
you
Jim,
tomorrow night
6 o'clock.
at Boston Blooms. I'm going to be there, by the way.
Okay.
I am really going to be there.
We are
You know what I'm doing? I'm picking you up, too, by the way.
Okay. All right.
Right
okay.
after my show.
Yep.
I'm
yep.
picking you up. You're not making eye contact.
I won't hold my breath, Jim.
Okay, fine.
When the
I'm gonna
phone
be
don't
there.
ring.
I'm going to be there.
Okay, thank you very much for
Thank
listening
you.
to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. Tune in tomorrow for a personal finance columnist, Michelle Singletary.
Talk about good timing.
Yeah, she's going to talk about taxes, questions about your student loan debt, inflation, all matters of money. She's such fun to talk to. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Mackenzie Farkas, Rebecca Tauber, our engineer, John the Claw Parker, our executive producer, Jamie Bologna, our special thanks to our engineering crew down here at the BPL, Chris Kelly, Sai Patel, and Steve Baracci. What's on TV tonight?
You're going to be
Jim?
interested in my show tonight. We talked about To Kill a Mockingbird with Jared before. Richard Thomas, yes, that Richard
great.
Thomas. And
John Boy.
Yeagle T. Welch, who does a brilliant job as Tom Robinson. They're both going to join me tonight, obviously from To Kill a Mockingbird, playing in town as we speak. And secondly, Charlie Sennett has done Report for America. Charlie's going to join me along with the head of the Neiman Foundation, talking about the disappearance of local news in the state as we speak and how dangerous that is for democracy. That's all tonight at 7 o'clock on Greater Boston.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm Margery Egan.
I'll see you all tomorrow night. I will have Margery in tow at Boston Blooms. Look for us. We'll be there.
Okay.
I'm Jim Browley.
Yeah, and thank you so much for tuning
you
in
a
today.
lot.
Thank you for the people who came
Thank
down
you
to the
all.
Boston
We
Public
appreciate it.
Library. And have a great day, and I hope you can tune in again tomorrow.
Bye.